Sairam, thought for the day. Consider the meaning of the name Sai Baba. Sa means divine, I or Ai means mother, and Baba means father. Your physical parents exhibit love with a dose of selfishness, but Sai, your divine mother and father, showers affection or reprimands only to lead you towards victory in the struggle for self realization. Sai descended as Avatar to achieve the supreme task of uniting the entire mankind as one family through the bond of brotherhood, of affirming and illumining the divine, Atmic reality in every being. Divinity is the basis for the entire cosmos, and my mission is to instruct all to recognize the common divine heritage that binds one person to another, so that you can rid yourself of the animal and rise to the divine. I desire that you contemplate on this, derive joy, and be inspired to observe the spiritual disciplines I laid down to progress toward the goal of realizing Sai, who shines in your hearts. Divine Discourse, 19th June 1974.
सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्।
गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनशृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती नीलाम्बवित्रयवतु गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम्। ॐ सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
यच्छन्दसां वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृताः सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया शृणोतु अमृतस्य देवदारणो भूयासं शरीरं मे विचर्षणम् जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरि विश्वम् ब्रह्मणघोषोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय मेधार्हि दृश्यमानानागात् विश्वासि भद्रा सुमनस्यमाना त्वया जुष्टानुगमाना दुरुक्तान् बृहद्वदेम विदते सुवीराः त्वया जुष्टऋषिर्भवति देवि त्वया ब्रह्मा गतश्रीभूतत्वया त्वया जुष्टश्चित्रं विन्दते वसुसानो जुषस्वद्रविणो न मेधे मेदाम इन्द्रो ददातु मेदां देवी सरस्वती मेदां मे अश्विना बुभावा दत्तां पुष्करस्रजा अप्सरासु च या मेधा गन्धर्वेषु च यन्मनः दैवी मेधा सरस्वती सामां मेधा सुरभिर्जुषतार स्वाहा आमां मेधा सुरभिर्विश्वरूपा हिरण्यवर्णा जगति जगम्या ऊर्जस्वती पयसा बिम्बमाना सामां मेधा सुप्रतीकाजुषन्ताम् मयि मेधा मयि प्रजा मयि अग्निस्तेजो ददातु मयि मेधा मयि प्रजा मयि इन्द्र इन्द्रियं ददातु मयि मेधा मयि प्रजा मयि सूर्यो व्राजो ददातु हंसाय विद्महे परमहंसाय धीमहि तन्नो हंसः प्रचोदयात्।
अस्थिरं जीवनं लोके अस्थिरं यौवनं धनम् अस्थिरं धारा पुत्रादि सत्यं कीर्ति द्वयं स्थिरम्.
The life is temporary. The youth and prosperity also are temporary. The wife and the family, they're all temporary. But two are permanent. Truth and good name are permanent.
ప్రేమ స్వరూపులారా,
Embodiments of love.
దైవాన్ని నమ్మితే ఒక్క మాట పైన చెప్పిన అన్ని మాటల పైన దాన్ని నమ్మాలి.
We should follow God in total faith in whatever He says.
నీకు ఇష్టమైనటువంటి దానిపైన నమ్మకము, ఇష్టం లేని దానిపైన నమ్మకం లేకుండా పోవటము అది సరైనటువంటి ఒక విశ్వాసం కాదు.
You have faith if you like that, and you have no faith if you dislike it. Is not proper.
ఒక చిన్న ఉదాహరణ,
A small example.
ఒక 10 సంవత్సరముల పూర్వము
10 years before,
ఒక పెద్ద మనిషి
an elderly person
సత్య సాయి బాబా ఈజ్ గాడ్ 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 అని చెప్పాడు.
declared that Sathya Sai Baba is God, God.
సత్య సాయి బాబానే కాదు, ప్రతి జీవి ఎందుకు గాడ్ ఉన్నాడు.
In fact, God is present in every individual.
కానీ ఆ విధంగా చాటుతూ వచ్చారు.
He went on declaring like that.
తిరిగి తమ యొక్క అభిష్టమును కొంతవరకు విరుద్ధంగా మారేటప్పటికి ఈజ్ నాట్ గాడ్, ఈజ్ నాట్ గాడ్ అని చెప్పారు.
The moment when his desires are not fulfilled, he said he is not God.
ఎస్ నో రెండు చెప్పింది ఒకే నోరే.
The same man declared yes and no.
ఆనాడు ఎస్ అన్నాడు,
He said yes then.
ఈనాడు నో అన్నాడు.
Today he says no.
అది నిజమా ఇది నిజమా?
Is that true or is this true?
ఏదో ఒకటి ఇందులో అబద్ధం ఒకటి ఉంది కదా.
One must be false out of these two.
కానీ ఏది అబద్ధము?
What are lies?
ఆనాడు చెప్పిందైనా అబద్ధమే, ఈనాడు చెప్పిందైనా అబద్ధమే.
That which has been said then must have been blatant lie, or that what has been said
ఇలాంటి
now.
రెండు పదములు చేరినటువంటి వానికి ఏ విధంగా భావించాలి? అది ఏ రాక్షస కృత్యం.
The one who made contradictory statements is a demon.
ఎస్ అను వారికి ఎస్ అనురా,
God says yes to those that say
నో అను
yes.
వారికి నో అనురా.
If you say no, God says no.
నో ఎస్సులు నీ నోటికి గాని సాయికి సర్వం ఎస్ ఎస్ ఎస్.
Yes, no belong to you, your declaration, your feeling, but to Sai God, everything is yes.
నాకు అందరూ మంచివారే,
To Bhagavan, all are good.
ఎవరు చెడ్డవారు లేరు.
There are no bad people.
కానీ
But
లౌకికమైన ఈ యొక్క నెగిటివ్ భావాలతో కూడినటువంటి వారికి కొంచెం మంచి చెడ్డలు విచారించుకోకుండా పోతే వాడి జీవితమే నాశనం చేసుకుంటారు.
But from the worldly point of view, if you are not cautious of the negative behavior, you will be spoiling your life.
కనుకనే మీకు కొన్ని చెప్పవలసి వస్తుంది.
So Bhagavan had to teach you these things.
నాకు అందరూ ప్రీతియే.
Bhagavan likes all.
నేను అందరినీ ప్రేమిస్తాను.
Swami loves all.
కానీ కొన్ని ఇలాంటి సందిగ్ధ అవస్థలు ఎందు మాత్రం వారికి నిశ్చ చెప్పాలి.
But when we are confused, Bhagavan should choose to teach us.
లేకపోతే మీ జీవితానికి చాలా ప్రమాదం ఏర్పడుతుంది.
Or else you will be put to danger in your life.
కనుక ఎవరెవరి డౌట్స్ వాళ్ళలో ఉండవచ్చును.
You may have doubts.
డౌట్స్ లేకుండా ఏ మానవుడు ఉండడానికి వీలు కాదు.
No man can live without doubts.
కాబట్టి ఆ డౌట్స్కి మీరు చోటు ఇవ్వద్దండి.
So don't give scope for any doubt.
అది ఉండినంత వరకు కూడా నిన్ను అనేక విధంగా అశాంతికి గురి వచ్చేస్తుంది.
The doubt in you will make you restless, agitated.
ప్రేమను మీరు పెంచుకోండి.
Develop love.
ప్రేమ మీ హృదయం నిండుకు పెంచుకున్నప్పుడే
When there is love in your
సర్వము
heart,
ప్రేమమయమే.
everything will be full of love.
ఆ ప్రేమముని దగ్గర ద్వేషం అనేది ఉండదు.
Where there is love, there is no
ద్వేషం
hatred.
లేనప్పుడు క్రోధం అనేదే రాదు.
When there is no hatred, there is no
క్రోధం అనేది
anger.
లేనప్పుడు ఈ హింసలే పానుకుంటారు.
When there is no anger, there is no violence.
కనుకనే దేర్ ఈజ్ విశ్వాసం అనగా కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ ఉంటుందో అక్కడనే ట్రూత్ వస్తుంది.
Where there is confidence, there is truth.
వేర్ దేర్ ఈజ్ ట్రూత్,
Where there is truth,
దేర్ ఈజ్ పీస్.
there is peace.
వేర్ దేర్ ఈజ్ పీస్,
Where there is peace,
దేర్ ఈజ్ బ్లిస్.
there is bliss.
వేర్ దేర్ ఈజ్ బ్లిస్,
Where there is bliss,
దేర్ ఈజ్ గాడ్.
there is God.
కనుకనే మొట్టమొదటి విశ్వాసాన్ని పెంచుకోండి.
So first, we should cultivate faith.
ఆ విశ్వాసమే లేకున్నప్పుడు ఎంత ఉండి ఏం ప్రయోజనం?
Without this faith, what for is the human life?
అందరినీ నమ్ము, తప్పు లేదు.
There's nothing wrong if you believe
కానీ
everybody.
దైవభావంతో నీవు విశ్వసించు.
But have faith with the divine prompting.
ఆ దైవభావంతో విశ్వసించినప్పుడు సర్వము నీకు దైవత్వంగానే కనిపిస్తుంది.
With the spiritual promptings, everything would be divine.
మనసులో ఒకటి, మాటలో మరొకటి.
Thought is one and that which is said is different.
ఇది కాదు, సరైనటువంటిది కాదు.
It's not proper on your part.
మనసు యందు ఒకటి, మాట యందు ఒకటి, క్రియలో మరొకటి.
The thought is one, that what is said is different and action is altogether opposite.
కనుక మూడు కూడా విరుద్ధమైనప్పుడు దానికి కేవలం రాక్షసత్వమే అవుతుంది.
When thought, word and deed are at variance,
మూడు
it is
చేరి ఒకటి
demonic
కావాలి.
nature.
అది ఏ త్రిపుటి అన్నారు.
There should be perfect unity and harmony in thought, word and deed.
త్రిగుణముల యందు పరిశుద్ధమైనటువంటి వాడే నిజమైనటువంటి వ్యక్తి.
You are a true human being if you have got the perfection in all the
వ్యక్తి
three
అనగా ఏమిటి?
attributes. Who is Vyakti?
సర్వ విషయములందు కూడాను తన యందున్నటువంటి శక్తి తత్వాన్ని స్వీకరించటమే వ్యక్తి.
Vyakti, the person, is the one who could acquire Shakti, the energy, out of all.
ఆ ఎనర్జీని నీవు స్వీకరించాలి.
And then you should acquire that energy.
కానీ ఎనర్జీ అంటున్నావు, ఎనర్జీలో పోతున్నావు.
But you say energy, but you are along allergy.
దానివల్ల నీకు ఏం సుఖం చిక్కుతుంది?
What happiness you have?
ఇదంతా నిరుపయోగమైనటువంటి సంకల్పాలుగా ఉంటాయి.
Everything would turn ultimately useless.
ప్రియమైన విద్యార్థులారా,
Students,
ముఖ్యంగా మీరు ప్రేమని మీరు అభివృద్ధి పరచుకోండి.
most importantly, develop love.
ఏది మీరు చేసుకోవడానికి వీలు లేకపోయినా ప్రేమ సులభంగా చిక్కేటువంటిది మీకు.
You may not be able to achieve anything, it's easy to love.
చైతన్యుడు చెప్పినట్టుగా,
As Chaitanya said,
నీ స్వర్గమో నా కైలాసమో నాకు అక్కర్లేదు,
I am not bothered of your heaven and paradise.
నీ వైకుంఠమో నీ ఇదే నాకు అక్కర్లేదు.
I'm not bothered of your Vaikuntha.
నాకు కావాల్సింది ప్రేమ రాజ్యమే.
What I want is this love.
కనుక నీ ప్రేమ సామ్రాజ్యంలో నాకు ఒక చోటు ఇచ్చేయి.
Give me a place in this kingdom of love.
అది ఒక్కటి నాకు చాలు.
That is enough
అది
for me.
ఒక్కటి ఉన్న సర్వము అక్కడ నాకు సిద్ధిస్తుంది.
With that gives me fulfillment.
ప్రేమతో సాధించలేనటువంటిది లోకంలో ఒక్కటి కూడా లేదు.
There's nothing that you cannot achieve in this world without love.
కనుకనే ప్రేమతో మనం దేన్నైనా మనం సాధించవచ్చు.
So you can accomplish anything through love.
కనుకనే ఇక్కడ మూడు చెప్పాడు తిరిగి.
So 3
తేజ
points.
దుర్జన సంసర్గం.
Run away from bad company.
కేవలం దుర్జన సంసర్గం త్యజించినంత మాత్రం చాలదు. బద్ధ సాధు సమాగమం, మంచి సంబంధాన్ని పెంచుకోవాలి.
It's not enough if you are away from the bad company. You should be in good company.
కురు పుణ్య మహోరాత్రం, ఎప్పుడు చూసినా కానీ నీవు మంచి కార్యం చేస్తురా.
Do meritorious deeds day in and day
అందుకోసమే
out.
మానవుడు పుట్టాడు.
Man is born for that.
మానవుడు పుట్టిండే తిని తిరిగి సంచరించడానికి కోసం కాదు.
Human life is not to spend time for food, raiment and shelter.
కానీ తిని తిరిగి సంచరించేటువంటి ఒక ప్రవర్తనలు పశుపక్షి మృగాదులు కూడా ఉన్నాయి.
This eating and drinking is equally done by
చాలా
animals.
ఉత్తముడు,
Human is noble,
పవిత్రుడు,
sacred,
సాత్వికమైనటువంటి వాడు,
and he is to be
సత్సంగం
liberated,
కలిగినటువంటి వాడు,
and he is one of truth.
సద్భావములు చలించేవాడు.
He has got good feelings.
అటువంటి మానవునికి ఇలాంటి బుద్ధులు రాకూడదు.
Such a man should not have such mean thoughts.
కనుక ప్రతి మానవుని ఎందుకు ఈ రాక్షస కృత్యములకు దూరం గావించుకుంటూ రావాలి.
Therefore one should be away from that wicked thoughts and
అప్పుడే
feelings.
అందరు కూడా దైవ స్వరూపులుగా మారుతారు.
Then everyone would be divine.
అందరి ఎందుకు దైవ స్వరూపం ప్రకటిస్తుంది.
Divinity manifests in everybody.
కనుక ఆ దైవత్వాన్ని ప్రకటించేటువంటి మార్గాన్ని మీరు వెతుక్కొని దాన్ని ప్రకటించుకొని దాన్ని ప్రచారం చేసి మీరు కూడా ఆనందించండి.
Let us be in search of that process which would help for the manifestation of the divinity within and share this with the rest of the people
మీలో
in the
ఏమాత్రం
neighborhood.
ఈ రాక్షస కృత్యాలకు ప్రవేశం ఇవ్వకూడదు.
Let there not be any wicked activity, cruel activity in us.
కనుకనే సద్భావం పెంచుకోండి,
Cultivate good feelings.
సత్ప్రవర్తనను ఉంచుకోండి.
Develop good
ఎవరొచ్చి
conduct.
ఏం చెప్పినా కానీ మీరు వినకండి.
Don't pay heed to any other words.
మంచి చెడ్డలు రెండు కూడా నువ్వు వినకండి.
And don't hear either this or
మీ
that.
భావంలో ఉన్నటువంటి దాన్ని సమృద్ధిగా అభివృద్ధి చేసుకోండి.
Proceed along that which is really present within you.
కనుక ఆ సత్యమైనటువంటి దాన్ని సెల్ఫ్ కాన్ఫిడెన్స్,
That truth is self-confidence.
ఆ సెల్ఫ్ కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ పెంచుకోండి.
Develop that self-confidence.
ఆ సెల్ఫ్ కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ ఉండినప్పుడే
Where there is self-confidence,
సెల్ఫ్ సాటిస్ఫాక్షన్ వస్తుంది.
then you will have self-satisfaction.
సెల్ఫ్ సాటిస్ఫాక్షన్ వచ్చినప్పుడే
When there is
సెల్ఫ్
self-satisfaction,
రియలైజేషన్ చేస్తావు.
then you will be able to
సెల్ఫ్
realize the
రియలైజేషన్
self.
చేసినప్పుడే
When you realize the self,
సెల్ఫ్ సాక్షాత్కారం అవుతుంది.
then you will have the manifestation, visualization of the self.
కనుకనే మొట్టమొదటి ఈనాడు మీరు ఒక విధమైనటువంటి ఒక భవనము పునాది వేసుకుంటూ రండి.
Today we have to lay the foundation for this
ఈ
mansion.
ఫౌండేషన్ నేలపైన కూలిపోతుంది,
And this foundation,
ఎవ్వరికి కనిపించదు,
you don't see the
భూమిలో
foundation.
మునిగిపోతుంది.
And it's in earth, in the soil.
కానీ పైన కట్టేటువంటి కట్టడాలే అందరికీ అందచందంగా కనిపిస్తుంటాయి.
But the building built over the foundation is so beautiful, which is apparent.
అదే సెల్ఫ్ కాన్ఫిడెన్స్.
That is, foundation is self-confidence.
భూమిలో వేసినటువంటిది సెల్ఫ్ కాన్ఫిడెన్స్,
That which is in the ground is self-confidence.
కానీ కనిపించేటువంటి సెల్ఫ్ సాటిస్ఫాక్షన్.
But that what is seen is self-satisfaction.
దాని పైన వేసేటువంటి రూఫే సెల్ఫ్ సాక్రిఫైస్.
And the roof is self-sacrifice.
ఆ రూఫ్ ఉండినప్పుడే మనం దాంట్లో నివాసం చేయొచ్చు.
When once the roof is laid, you can live there.
ఆ రూపు లోపలనే మనం సెల్ఫ్ రియలైజేషన్ చేయొచ్చు.
And that very life in that built mansion is self-realization.
పునాది లేకుండా, గోడలు కట్టకుండా, టాప్ వేయకుండా అందులో నివాసం చేస్తామంటే అది అసాధ్యము.
Without foundation, without erecting walls, without laying the roof, it is impossible to reside.
కనుక మీరు ఈనాటి నుంచి ఫౌండేషన్ నుంచి భద్రం చేసుకుంటూ రండి.
From this day onwards, we should lay the strong foundation.
స్టార్ట్ ఎర్లీ, డ్రైవ్ స్లోలీ, రీచ్ సేఫ్లీ అని చెప్పింది దీనికోసమని.
That's why Bhagavan said, start early, drive slowly, reach safely.
మీరు మంచిగా జీవితాన్ని రీచ్ చేయాలి.
You should lead your life in a
పవిత్రమైన
perfect,
జీవితాన్ని మీరు ప్రపంచానికి కూడా చాటాలి.
and you should share your sacred life with everybody.
ఎవరి దగ్గరికి పోయినప్పుడు కూడా ఏమనుకుంటారో అని మీరేం భయపడకండి.
Don't go by the consideration what would others think of you.
పోనీ అందరి దగ్గరికి పోయి గుడ్ మార్నింగ్ గుడ్ నైట్ అని చెప్పి అంటుంటారు.
We go on saying good morning, good night to
ఈ
everybody.
గుడ్ మార్నింగ్ గుడ్ నైట్ అనేటువంటి మంది కాదే ఇది.
This good morning, good night is not ours, truly.
నమస్కారం అండి అనండి, ఎంత ఆనందం అవుతుంది.
Say namaskar, you will be very blissful.
ఆ నమస్కారం చెప్పడం కూడా ఈనాడు చాలా బరువు అయిపోయింది.
And today we don't feel like doing namaskar.
పిల్లలు ఈనాడు మొదలు నుంచి కూడాను తల్లిదండ్రులను గౌరవించండి.
From this day, all students should love their parents, respect them.
తల్లిదండ్రులను ప్రేమించండి.
You love them,
తల్లిదండ్రుల ప్రేమకు గురికండి.
and you be the recipients of their love.
తల్లిదండ్రుల ప్రేమను అనుభవించినటువంటి వ్యక్తికి భవిష్యత్తు లోపల చక్కని పవిత్రత ఉంటుంటుంది.
And if you really enjoy the love of your parents, your life is going to be sacred.
తల్లి యొక్క ఆశీర్వాదము అత్యవసరము.
And the blessing of the mother is
తల్లుల మనసును
essential.
ఎంత బాధ పెడతారో ఆ పిల్లలు కూడా జీవితానికి అంత బాధకరంగా ఉంటుంది.
If your parents suffer, you are going to suffer in future.
కనుక నీ తల్లిదండ్రులకు ఏమాత్రం కూడా బాధ పెట్టకండి.
Never make your parents suffer.
వాళ్ళని ఆనంద పెట్టి
You make them
మీరు కూడా
happy.
ఆనందపడినప్పుడే మీ బిడ్డలు తిరిగి మీకు ఆనందాన్ని అందిస్తారు.
When you make them happy, and when you are happy in turn, your children will make you happy.
కనుక మీరు ఒక ఆనందాన్ని అందించి ఆనందాన్ని తిరిగి పుచ్చుకోండి.
Therefore, share this happiness with everybody and receive
కేవలం
happiness from
ఇచ్చుకోవడం
all.
మాత్రమే కాదు, పుచ్చుకోవడం కూడా జరగాలి.
Not simply giving, you should also
దిస్ ఇస్
receive.
నాట్ వన్ వే ట్రాఫిక్, గివ్ అండ్ టేక్, గివ్ అండ్ టేక్.
It's not one-way traffic, it's two-way traffic, by channel, give and take.
కనుకనే జీవితాన్ని సార్థకంగా గావించుకోవడానికి మంచి మాటలు మాట్లాడండి.
And speak well so as to redeem your lives.
మంచి చూపులు చూడండి.
Have good looks.
మంచి పవిత్రమైన విషయాలు వినండి.
Listen to sacred
పవిత్రమైన
things.
జీవితాన్ని గడపండి.
Lead a sacred life.
Saram everyone.
Saram.
I offer loving pranams to our beloved Lord, Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Dear brothers and sisters and children, loving Sairams to all of you on this holy Aradhana Day 2022, and welcome to our Sri Sathya Sai South Bethesda Center Aradhana Day program. 11 years ago today, all of us, children of Swami, whatever our age, were forced to grow up. For decades, our beautiful Lord had captivated us in human form, teaching us, loving us, reforming us, and fixing all our problems. And suddenly, that beautiful form was gone. Whether we wanted to or not, he made us graduate to the next class. He repeatedly told us that he was within each one of us. And since 2011, he has forced us to look for him within our own hearts. And as if the withdrawal of his physical form was not enough, he has also challenged us to seek him in isolation and in silence during the pandemic. Swami confined himself, this Paramatma, the basis of the entire universe, to a beautiful human form out of love and compassion for us, and in order to make himself accessible to all of us. What an incredible act of love. And so today, we are filled with gratitude for the immense good fortune and grace that we have received to see him, to have his darshan, sparshan, and sambhashan, and we pray for his ever-present grace that will allow us to experience him more and more within ourselves with each passing day. Today, we are immensely grateful to welcome Brother Sanjay Sahni as our guest speaker on the topic of the enigma of Swami the human and Swami the divine. His talk will be followed by a 45-minute question and answer session. And we encourage you to submit questions. We already have some. We encourage you to submit on the chat during his talk, and we will try to get to them. And then the Q&A will be followed by bhajans and closing prayers. I'll turn it over now to Mohan Kumar, our SSSE coordinator, to introduce Brother Sanjay Sahni. Sairam, and welcome again.
Dearest Bhagavan, my most humble pranams at your lotus feet. Sairam to all of you. Welcome, sir. Sanjay Sahni, sir. It is a pleasure to have you today and to relive and recollect the old memories with Swami, especially on the Aradhana day. It's a day to recollect and relive and pray to Swami. And it's an honor to introduce our own Sanjay Sahni, sir. He was our warden during our postgraduate days. Everybody knows him for his, very insightful talks. Dr. Sanjay Sahni, sir, was the first batch of 5-year integrated commerce program student at Prashantinilayam from 1980 to 1987. Later, he joined as a lecturer in Prashantinilayam And he became a warden at a very young age of 25 in 1990 to 1993. Then later he became the director of Vrindavan campus in 2002. He was personally guided by Swami as warden and the director of the college Vrindavan. And now he is the controller of examination from 2016. Many of us, as we have lived with him, many of us recollect him, and we have learnt a lot of watching him and his interaction with Swami. The one thing all his classmates and students, I can also say that he had a total attention on Swami, and his remarkable ability to watch Swami's every action and pay attention to every word of Swami, and then to follow Swami's word implicitly without interpreting for our own convenience or circumstances. Many of his classmates say nothing could come in between him and Swami. He followed all the rules, regulations, and discipline of the hostel as a student to earn Swami's grace. And one of his classmates said, in one word, Sanjay Sahni means discipline. He is an example for discipline. Sanjay Sahni sir became a warden at the age of 25, and it is not a joke to be a warden of Swami's Institute. It's a great responsibility, and to become warden at that age means how much of love, dedication for Swami he has, and Swami has chosen him. In the hostel, he was a warden. It's not an easy job, as I said. They have to get up very early in the morning to wake up students. In fact, he used to come and wake us up at 5 o'clock. So before that, they have to be ready. This is to go for Suprabhatam. And he once famously said in Dharmakshetra, he himself has narrated and Swami has acknowledged, prayer is man's only strength and God's only weakness. And that is why probably they used to wake us up so early in the morning and make us pray. And not only that, as a warden, they have to get ready for the breakfast, make sure that we go to the institute. He used to just watch us, so that every one of us do everything standing outside the hostel building. They have to make ready breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything they need to take care of it, hostel duties. Apart from that, he was also teaching. So you can imagine the amount of work they used to do lovingly for Swami, and they used to get very little time for themselves. Many of his students remember lovingly him as he used to take special classes very early in the morning so that they get good marks and get a good name to Swami. He is very well known, and we all used to love to hear his talks in front of Swami on many occasions, and that too Swami used to make him speak impromptu. Many occasions like, Prashanti Vidwan Mahasabha, like Dasara, very few gifted speakers are selected, and almost every year I can remember Sanjay Sai sir used to speak. Not only that, in the hostel he used to hold Paranam sessions and the summer course, awareness classes, and especially I like his talks on Ramayana. He was an excellent oratory. He has oratory skills and can convey Swami's message very eloquently to the whole world. And then he used to speak so intuitively, giving spiritual insights and then messages, conveying in very simple words. In fact, his talks are thought-provoking, bringing spiritual significance. Each of his talks are very new, fresh, and unique. And his talks are not just talks, they're full, come from the experience and the way they lived with Swami and what they have practiced. So without much ado, to listen to Sanjay Sahni sir once again, welcome you. Sairam sir, over to you.
Offering my loving pranams at Bhagwan's lotus feet. Thank you, Mohan, though I feel it was a little too long an introduction, not too comfortable with that. Thank you, Sister Ramya, and warm greetings from Prashantilyam on this auspicious Aradhana day to all devotees in South Bethesda Center, United States of America, and all others who have joined in or may see this satsang video at a later point of time. In Indian culture, there are three fundamental pillars which are literally the cornerstone of Indian thought and belief. The first is belief in avatar. The second is the theory of karma. And the third is reincarnation. So today I thought I will focus on the first of them and relate it to Swami, whom we had the fortune of interacting with, seeing, talking, living with in our own lifetime. Sri Aurobindo said, the avatar is a dual phenomenon of the divine and the human. Swami himself would say that I eat with you, talk like you, move around, walk around like you, but do not be deluded that this is another instance of humanity. At any point of time, my divinity may be revealed to you. How do you relate to someone whom, as he mentioned to one of our devotees, Mr. Iradi, who was part of our Prashanti Bhajan group? One day, Swami was talking to him with his mother in the interview room, and he said, whenever I see any individual, 1,000 lives before and 1,000 lives to come, apart from this life, they are available to me in half a second. He's seeing it and knowing everything about that soul. He talks to you as if he knows nothing and asks, simple questions like, where have you come from? What is your name? And, questions like that. But that was Swami, and he himself revealed his nature once at the end of a beautiful talk that he gave on Saint Tyagaraja in our students' hostel with such elaborate and graphic detail. At the end of the talk, he revealed something about his own nature. He said, God knows everything, but pretends that he knows nothing. Man knows nothing, but pretends that he knows everything. That Swami, who the Vedas say, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasahasa. He is beyond description of any human tongue. In any language, he cannot be described. He is beyond the grasp of the human mind, and yet we are participating in this satsang and talking about him. What gives us that confidence to do so? And in this context, I'm reminded of a little conversation Swami had with a schoolboy in Trai Vrindavan one evening. Swami was trying to persuade him to speak to the gathering there with students and the faculty. And the boy was very shy, he was very reluctant, he was trying to wriggle out. And then Swami made this beautiful statement. He said, "You don't realize the reason I'm asking you to speak to me, speak here, is it is a chance for you to speak to me. It's a chance for you to speak to me." So, in that spirit, I'm fully conscious that Swami is listening to all the deliberations that are taking place in the satsang. And he is, even though invisible, but sitting at 1.1 position to listen to what his devotees are thinking about him and talking about him. It's our fortune that we have this wonderful opportunity, and in the pandemic times, irrespective of the other challenges that we have had, but there's one thing which is multiplied manifold worldwide, is this virtual mode of satsangs and contemplations on Bhagwan. Why should we contemplate on him and on his life? One message comes from the Gita. Lord Krishna says, "Janma karma chame divyam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna." He addresses Arjuna, and Arjuna is literally a representative of all of us. His other name was Partha. Partha, Swami would say, is Prithvi Putra. So we are all children of Mother Earth, and therefore Arjuna was our representative. And this is the message Lord Krishna gives to him. And he says that those who understand the divine nature of my advent and my activities, I assure you, when they give up the body, there shall not be any rebirth for them. So this contemplation on the life of Bhagwan is not just a simple activity. If we focus on it with concentration and imbibe the spirit in which the whole satsang is organized, focused only on Bhagwan, it has a liberating influence on the mind, which is all the time being dragged into the attractions of the world. I recall at this juncture, Mr. John Hislop, he was the president of Sri Sathya Sai organization, United States, one of the earliest foreign devotees to come to Bhagwan's lotus feet. He was speaking to us one day in the moral class in the university here when we were students, and he shared this conversation with Bhagwan. Swami, he said, was speaking about his avataric mission, and he said the avatar is like an aeroplane. And the aeroplane is seen on the ground for some time. People may mistake it to be a terrestrial vehicle, but that is not the real purpose why the aeroplane is in the airport. The aeroplane has come that all those who are ready and those who have the ticket, they can board the aircraft, and then the aircraft will go up into the air and it will take them high into the skies. So that is the purpose why the aeroplane has come. And Swami said the avatar is like that. He comes to take those passengers who are ready for takeoff with him. And Mr. Hislop got a doubt. He said, Swami, in an aircraft, there are only limited seats. And Swami said, yes, Hislop, it is only at any point of time a limited people who will have that inclination to take off with the Lord. However wonderful it may be to feel that spirituality should be a mass movement, that is not how life in the world is going to be. And so Mr. Hislop's face became very small. He was a little crestfallen. Oh, so everybody will not recognize the avatar. Everybody may not be able to benefit from the avatar. That was going in his mind. Of course, Swami himself has said at another point of time, he said, when the avatar is there on earth, every soul will get at least one chance. Now, how that chance comes to him, now it is for him to grab that chance or to ignore that chance. So when Swami saw that Hislop was a little crestfallen, Swami immediately said, but Hislop, if you have my grace, I can just, the ticket of my grace, I can just tell you, hop in Hislop and you can also be one of the passengers in that plane. And Swami's plane, how many seats are there? That nobody knows, that only Swami knows. So, for example, the interview room, it used to be such an amazing phenomenon. I remember when we were in our third UG, Swami called all the final year third UG students and the final PG students in that small interview room. And can you believe it? We were 83 of us sitting in the small interview room and the inside interview room with Swami. It's something unimaginable to even imagine that that was possible. But we used to call it a rubber room. Whenever Swami wanted, he could accommodate as many, So that is what we have seen. So there's nothing to be really concerned about. More important is what he said, that if you have the ticket of my grace, you can also hop in. So, as I said, the purpose of the theme of my talk today is Sai the human and Sai the divine. Swami himself has spoken about it. He was telling once how there is, when he made this advent, there was this Jiva Pragya, which is the individual consciousness, and the Daiva Pragya, the divine consciousness, both of them were there in him. And so the devotee got a little doubt. He said, Swami, we can understand that you have the divine consciousness, but how do you say that you have the individual consciousness? I mean, that is a little surprising for us. And Swami said, see, when I think I am Sai Baba, that is Jiva Pragya. That is individual consciousness. When I think I am I, that is Daiva Pragya. So, the Jiva Pragya and the Daiva Pragya juxtapose with each other. And such a personality you are relating with, you are dealing with, you are interacting with on a day-to-day basis, not easy, but at the same time, the only way to really approach him is with a heart filled with love. In this context, I am reminded of how Swami was interacting with devotees. I happened to be called into the interview room with devotees, and Swami was praising the foreign devotees. He said, see, they come from so far with so many challenges, so many difficulties. I just give them a glance. I just may not even, look at them, but just to see me itself, they get so much of joy. They are like the bees. They come from far. They suck the nectar of the lotus and they return to their places fully content, fully satiated. And then he made this observation. He said, like frogs around a well, you are around me, but you don't recognize my value. So I was the only fellow who was, a student and staying at Prashanti. And so I realized that this particular message is exclusively for me. So don't be the frog, be the bee. That was the message I got from that little conversation. And I remember Dr. Gokak. He was the first vice chancellor of our university. He also had so many intimate interactions with Swami, including accompanying Swami to various places in his travels. And once he was sharing, suddenly Swami comes early morning into his room, and Swami said, Gokak, can I borrow your shaving razor? I forgot to get mine. So Gokak was so surprised. I mean, you relate to Swami in so many ways, but so Swami coming and ask you, can I borrow your shaving razor? These are very special moments. And then the same Professor Gokak, when he went to United States and he was interacting with them, the devotees there, this was the expression of his feeling. He said, on the other side of the continent, I interacted with Sai devotees and found them so intensely connected with Sai, so intensely devoted to Sai, and they are on the other side of the world where I am, and that is the Vishwarupa Darshan which Swami gave me. By seeing his American devotees in United States of America, he felt that this is the Sai. And Kasturiji used to, make this observation. What do they know of Prashanti Nilayam, who only Prashanti Nilayam know? If you want to see Swami's glory, you have to go and see how his name and glory has spread all over the world. Then you will know who is Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. At this juncture, I am reminded of another American. This was Mr. Frank Baranowski. He was a very unique personality. And I remember when we were final year postgraduate students, Swami had permitted him to come to the hostel and interact and speak to the students about his own experiences. And he had a great gift from life, from Swami, right from his childhood. He never realized, he thought it was something which was very natural for everybody. He used to see colors and he thought that everybody sees like him. But only when he matured a little, he realized that it was something very, very unique to him. Basically, he was able to see the aura of any human being or any object also. And in that particular talk, apart from describing the aura of Swami, he showed us beautiful slides which Kirilian photography had captured. For example, he showed the leaf on a tree and it was captured through Kirilian camera. And we could see that aura of that leaf. And then he showed another slide. Apparently, the leaf had been torn away from the branch of the tree, but the aura of the leaf was still there. And he said, see, look at the aura of the leaf. Even though the leaf is separated from the branch of the tree, the aura still remains with the tree. And he said, this is the insight which we got, and the understanding which it brought. For example, in World War II, there were many of these prisoners of war who were injured, and they were being treated, and some of them had their legs amputated. And when they would say that, please cover me with the blanket, and the family members or the nurses would be covering, they said, no, cover me from the edge of the bed. I feel still cold. And everybody would wonder, there's no leg there. Where is the question of they feeling cold? And then when the Kirilian photographs came in, he said, then only we realized that though the leg was no longer there, the aura of the leg was still there. And that is what, made them feel like that. And Mr. Baranowski then made a very unique experiment. He called out 3 members from our audience. And the first person was a young 8th class student. And he said, think of something which makes you happy. And he took out from his pocket a small device. And whereas the boy closed his eyes and started thinking about, he himself suggested, there's nothing which can give you more happiness than Swami's thought. So think of Swami. So that device was in its normal state. The moment he brought it near, maybe 2 inches, it got deflected. He said, see, this is the proof that the device has entered the energy zone of that individual. And then after a few minutes, when this boy was thinking of Swami, he carried that a little away, and we found that maybe 1 or 2 feet away, the device was still deflected. So he took it to 2-3 people, and in the third case, it extended for a very long distance. And that was a proof that just by thinking of Swami, that itself increases the aura energy of our. So what is the personality of Bhagwan, was scientifically demonstrated to us in that unique experiment. Of course, with his own naked eyes, he was able to see Swami's aura. And as he described one darshan scene many years ago that he had, he was saying how before Swami came for darshan, there was apparently a black cloud which was there on the group which was assembled there in the darshan area. And then Swami came, and his aura was so encompassing, it just threw away that it was a pink aura, and it just threw away that black cloud, and it just disappeared. So that was the power of Swami's darshan. More important is the next day when we were in darshan, Swami asked us, students, how was Baranowski's talk yesterday? And we said, Swami, it was very nice. And then Swami made this statement. He said, he is a wise man, students are blind. He is a wise man, students are blind. And what I inferred from that is, he was seeing Swami not as a human. He saw Swami as the embodiment of love. That was the description of his for Swami. Love walking on 2 feet. That's how the Swami describes, Baranowski described Bhagwan. So, whereas we see Swami, but we see him as a human. We are not able to see that divine form, the embodiment of love that he was, except on occasions when we felt it intensely in our heart. So that was the message Swami gave us in our brief interaction with Mr. Baranowski. So Swami himself has said, see, I can transform the sky into the earth into sky. One day he was speaking to students, he said, I can transform any one of you. He was speaking to boys. He said, I can transform any one of you from a boy into a girl, and then a girl back into a boy. So do you want a demo? He went, and then our Vice Chancellor, Saraf Sir, was there, and he pointed to the treasurer, Mr. I.J. Naidu, who was sitting in the first row next to him. He said, Swami, you can demonstrate on him. So it was a little comic conversation at that point of time. And then Swami said later. But Swami said, see, all this the avatar can do. And he can do anything. But that is not the real sign of divine might. The real sign of divine divinity is his love. And that is what, a few minutes ago, we heard Swami exhorting all of us to exhibit and practice that love in our own lives, because that is the divine nature in us. And when you practice it, you manifest it. You manifest your divine nature through the practice of love. Having said this, I may say that with Swami, at any point of time, it could be a very casual moment, a very intimate moment, and suddenly there would be a flash. As he said, any moment my divinity may be revealed to you. So this was one evening, we were in Kodaikanal with Swami, and it was the turn of Jindrani to speak that day evening in the devotees meeting. So that meeting got over and we returned to the drawing room of Sai Shruti, which was Swami's residence in Kodaikanal. And it was a very intimate, happy, relaxed setting. And in a very casual and jovial manner, Swami asked Jindrani, how old are you? And we were very surprised by her response. She said, Swami, I am 4 months younger to you. Not many people will be able to speak to Swami like that, but this is how she related to Swami. And so we all broke into spontaneous laughter, and Swami also could not help smiling and laughing. And then the laughter died down. And there was silence. And then came these words from Swami. He waited for everybody to get over this jovial atmosphere which had just been created. And in that silence came these words. He said, Jindrani, you're not younger to me. You are younger, 4 months younger to this body. I am ageless. In that fraction of a second, suddenly Swami transported us to a very different dimension. And we realized that Swami was not the Swami sitting, who was sitting in front of us. He was a different phenomenon. On another occasion, again in Kodaikanal, Swami picked up, there was the short boy, and Swami picked up that boy and he said, hey Potti, Potti means a short person. Hey Potti, what's your height? And he of course kept mum. And so I get up, and Swami made him get up and stand next to him. And we were really amused because Swami himself was 5'3", and this fellow was shorter than Swami. And Swami asked him, who's taller? And obviously he said, Swami, you are taller than me. And Swami said, see, I'm even without my hair, I'm 5'3", and you are less than me also. So it was a very comical scene and we were enjoying the conversation. And suddenly, having told him that you're smaller than me, came Swami's bombshell. And that was the Vedic declaration. He said, Anoraniyan. And Swami said, no, that's not right. I am smaller than you. And then he added this Veda stanza. He said, Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan. How can a 5'3" personality be smaller than a 5'2" personality? He said, because I am smaller than the smallest, I am bigger than the biggest. So that was another flash in a moment. And suddenly we found that, this is not just an ordinary human being that we are talking to or interacting with. He was always steeped in that consciousness. I remember on another occasion, we were a few students who had been selected to speak during the Prashanti Vidwan Mahasabha. And Swami was asking each student in an interview prior to that event, what would be their topic, what topic they had selected. And this one student, he got up on his knees. He said, Swami, I want to speak that we should have gratitude to you, he said. And suddenly, Swami, who was leaning forward, he leaned back and he said, that is not something for me to tell you. I cannot tell you that you should be grateful or should not be grateful. And then he laid out, he put his two palms. He said, see, this is your level and this is my level, So he made that distinction. Immediately we felt he had gone into some distant horizon, though we were sitting just 2 feet next to him. So there were always those glimpses of divinity, and the reverse also would be there. And this is an experience of one of our teachers in Vrindavan. It so happened that that particular year we had so many instances of chicken pox amongst the students. And it started sometime in the early part of the semester, maybe June, July. And, the infection spreads from one to the other, though we isolate them. And so throughout the year, we kept on having these chickenpox cases. So much so that the month of March, which is a month looked forward to in those days by Vrindavan students, but that would be the month when Swami would visit Vrindavan. And we had chickenpox cases still going into that month. In fact, the chickenpox boys started praying, sir, we are praying that nobody else should fall sick now, because if they get sick now, then they will lose the chance of Swami's interaction in Trai. But it so happened that some students did fall sick, and usually they would be housed in the second hostel, which is next to the Walter Cowan block, which is their hostel in Vrindavan. So that isolation would take place. But because Swami was coming and that hostel would be then allotted for accommodation to the devotees, so there was no place to accommodate these students. So they were then housed in the college. So there were some guest rooms in the college, so they were kept there. And it so happened that this teacher happened to visit this boy. Swami had already come and our Trai sessions had started, and we were all having a wonderful time interacting with Swami and Trai. And this teacher went to meet this chickenpox boy. Some of the teachers who didn't have chickenpox earlier would avoid, but if you have had that infection, then usually you don't catch it again. So he had gone to meet that student. And that student was, of course, missing Swami. And he requested that teacher, sir, can you give this letter of mine to Swami? Now, that is indirect transmission of letters is something which Swami would not advise the teachers. And so he knew that Swami may not appreciate his taking the letter, but looking at the predicament of the boy and how he was feeling, he couldn't tell him no on his face. So he took his letter. And then he was wondering what to do. So next day morning, early morning when he gets up, he was having the letter next to him on the table in his room. And he thought to himself that Swami has said that if any devotee writes a letter, immediately the message has already reached Swami. So the message has already reached Swami, and Swami has already told us that, we should not become postman taking letters to him. If anybody wants to give, let them make their own attempt in darshan line and do it their own way, or send it by registered post or whatever. So he was wondering that Swami, the message has already reached. So now I cannot give this letter physically to Swami. So it was early morning hours. He picked up that letter, envelope, and he was about to tear it into pieces and throw it in the dustbin. And early morning, 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m., whatever time it was, suddenly, out of the blue, his whole hands, which were having that envelope in the hand, right up to the forearm, was filled with vibhuti. Swami creating vibhuti and giving to a devotee is one thing. To have vibhuti manifested on your hand is not something which you can relate to. And he froze in that moment, thinking that he was committing some crime or something like that, and Swami didn't want him to tear that letter. And oh my Lord, it was such a divine electric shock, which he got. So then he decided that he will take that envelope and put a stamp, and he put it in the ashram post box, let it go to Swami in the usual way. I cannot give it to Swami. But with that electrifying experience in the morning, he felt he must go and meet Swami. Now, the hostel teachers had a little privilege that they could take. And so taking that privilege, this staff member, he goes to Trai early morning. And Swami, that's the first time he would come out of the bath, and he would go for his breakfast. So at that point of time, when he thought he will catch Swami. So he was waiting down, and Swami came out of his bedroom upstairs. And then as he was going through the corridor, he sees him and says, Amy, what happened? So he runs up, and now he is speechless. He doesn't know what to tell. How to tell Swami that Swami, that boy had given a letter, and I was about to tear it, and I about to put it in the dustbin, and this vibhuti manifested, and you have done this. And Swami, you are God. He was in that electrifying experience, but he didn't know how to tell Swami. So to start a conversation or to get out of that inconvenient, awkward moment, he said, Swami, today is Sunday. This was the first sentence which came up. And Swami said, Amy, what is that? I didn't catch it. And as if, Swami was saying that I didn't hear what you said. So he took his ear a little more closer to him. And this faculty, now with a little louder voice, he said, Swami, today is Sunday. And again, Swami said, no, I'm not able to hear you. And now this person was shouting at the top of his voice in the trai, outside Swami's bedroom. He is shouting, Swami, today is Sunday. And Swami said, I had bath and the water has gone into my ear. I'm not able to hear properly. We will talk later. And that fellow, that faculty was, in such an ecstasy. They would do, Swami, you are divine. And, I had this electrifying experience in the morning. And suddenly he's brought to, ground zero. And Swami saying, I'm not able to hear you. And, with that conversation, he returns to the hostel. But the reason why I narrate that is a very specific reason and understanding which I had from that. See, no doubt Swami would give us many occasions to get a glimpse of his divinity, but he didn't want us to put him in a pedestal and feel that he is a class apart and we are, some low-grade, beings. He always wanted us to relate to him, human to human, heart to heart, love to love. So when he was in that, Swami, you are divine, divine. Suddenly Swami put up this little human drama, brought him down. Hey, don't think like that. You just see, I'm not able to even hear you because the water has gone into my ear, and brought him to ground zero, So he wanted us to relate to him at a human level, because as he said, if I had come as Narayana, with the 4 arms, you would have put me in a museum. And for people who come to see me, you may have even charged, some ticket fees from them. And if I had come as a normal human being, you would not have recognized, you would not have cared for what I am or what I have come to convey to you. And that is why the avatar has to come with a human frame, just like any one of you, but with super wisdom and super power, so that you can benefit from the presence of the avatar. So in our intimate relationship with him, we had that wonderful opportunity to relate to him as a human. And in fact, when I was the warden, I had so many occasions, either it was the students' experience or my experience or our experience together with Swami, to see how he was divine and yet so human. I remember I was a young teacher in the college. This was even before I became the warden. And one day Swami was, speaking to all the teachers at Prashantliam campus of our university. And he was telling that, you give importance to so many subjects, but I want that you give importance to my subject, and my subject is discipline. So just as you give to your respective subjects, you must give importance to my subject as well. And then he gave an instance. He said, see, for example, a student comes late to your class. What do? You say, okay, come in. And so the student will never learn. He says, one day you send him out, immediately he will, that is the chancellor speaking. So he said, one day you send him out, immediately he will come around. So this was a talk which Swami had given, and some tips he had given to all of us, young and old teachers. And sure enough, a few days later, I was taking the first period after lunch in the college, and the student came a little late. So thinking that there could be some genuine problem that the student has, I asked him, why are you late? And he said, sir, I have no reason I am late. I said, if you have no reason, then you're too early for the next period. Go to the library, come back when the bell rings for the next period. So I sent him out of the class. And that evening, I was sitting in my room, and the student comes running to me. And he says, sir, you complained about me to Swami today. I said, I complained to Swami because I was not able to relate to what he was saying. He said, sir, I was in my darshan line and Swami came near me and he said, hey, today you went late to class and your teacher sent you out. And that boy was thinking that how did Swami come to know? It is my teacher who has complained to Swami, and that is why Swami has hauled me up on the darshan line. So he came to tell me, he said, whatever I had to tell you, I have told you personally. Why should I tell Swami about it? So that was a revelation for that student. Ooh, that means even if my teacher doesn't tell Swami, Swami knows everything. So that, that divine moment, revelation came to him at that moment. And for me also, it was an acknowledgement card that I received from Swami, because Swami had given that suggestion and this was his acknowledgement. See, I know that you have followed my instructions, and he gave me the intimation also that I know that you took that action and I'm very happy about it. No, that was the message that I got. So both of us got our own messages, but that was how it is. One day I remember Swami was speaking to me. I was one-to-one with Swami, and he was telling, the students. One thing with Swami was he always wanted his students to look like a Sai student. See, first you pretend to be a Sai student, then you tend to be a Sai student or a Sai devotee, and then you end up being a true Sai student or a true Sai devotee. But starting, you have to start, from basics. So Swami used to be very particular, especially boys. They should be well groomed, they should have a haircut, they should have shaved properly. And I remember once Swami was talking to all of us, and he went round darshan line and he came in. He said, I saw this fellow, and have you seen him? He was having so much of beard and he looked like a beggar to me, with all that beard. And Swami said that you all should not look like beggars, you should be bigger. This was what Swami was telling to the current student. That boy had passed out and he had gone. So this was what Swami expressed. There's another very interesting dialogue which took place between two students. And they were conversing. See, Swami keeps telling us that we should not have beard and the like, but Shri Baba himself sported a beard. This is what one student expressed. And the other boy, suddenly at that point of time, he was so overwhelmed with love. This was the vibration that he experienced, and spontaneously it came out. He said, but the purpose of the Sathya Sai avatar was to unite Hindus and Muslims. So that is why he did that. That's what he expressed. And it so happened that they met the warden that day, and this boy, he met the warden, and warden said, today I had a very interesting conversation with Swami, and Mr. V.K. Narasimhan, who was the editor of the Sanatan Sati, also was there. And Swami was speaking about, see how every avatar, their face will shine like the moon, and it will be so clean and it will be glowing. And he was describing Sri Rama, and suddenly out of the blue, V.K. Narasimhan interjected. He said, what about Shri Baba, Swami? Shri Baba had a beard, your previous incarnation. And now this boy was very, very curious to know, because that same conversation has taken place that very day in their own room in the hostel. So he asked her, what did Swami say? And this is what the warden told. He said, Swami said that the purpose of the Shirdi Sai avatar was to unite Hindus and Muslims. So he was always, sort of having features of both Hindus and Muslims, and this was something which he adorned on his personality, physical personality, so that the Muslims could relate to him and identify him easily. And that brought them closer to him, and they thought that he is ours. So that was and the boy was so dazed to hear. And the crucial point is that when he had the same thought and expressed it, he was so overwhelmed with love, vibration at that point of time. He felt Swami's love, that, that was the thought which he got. And the insight which I got from that experience is that when we are inspired by that love, which Swami speaks of here also in today's message, Swami was speaking about love, and he said, love is selfless, love is fearless. And he also has said in the past, love is changeless. It is not dependent. You are following Swami's words. Swami is very, very happy with you. You're not following Swami's words, that is definitely a loss for you, but Swami's love for you is equal. It is not, it doesn't go up and down with the waves of the sea. So that is that changeless love. And anytime you make a U-turn, immediately you will experience that love. So one day Swami was telling you, hostel, the boys are having so much of long hair and all that. Tell them strongly, he said. And so I thought to myself, and at that point of time, I used to have a little more hair. And when I was looking at my face in the mirror, I felt there was a little tuft of hair, which I felt was a little too long, and it was falling on my forehead. So I thought, before I tell the students, I should, first practice what Swami has asked me to convey to the students. So I took a little scissor and I chopped off a small inch or two from that hair which was falling on my forehead. And that evening, Swami again called me for the interview, and he asked me, hey, you chopped off your hair a little, huh? So, see, imagine such a small thing, but Swami, by reinforcing, and Swami was very delighted to note that. So, that this fellow got the message right, So, that was what I gathered, that Swami wanted his teachers always that, they should be the role model for the students. Not that we are perfect, we are still striving to be, the real role model for all of us was Bhagwan himself. And to emulate Bhagwan is a lifetime assignment. But every step you take in that direction is a direction towards Sai, and he is waiting. Little steps also take. I have experienced in my own life how he would see to it that he recognizes it, he appreciates it, or sometimes he chides you also for it. I remember I was a young teacher. It was the time when the first summer course was to be held in Vrindavan, 1990, and the warden had sent me a little early to receive the Parthi students who were coming a little earlier. And the Vrindavan warden had said that if there is some teacher from Prashanti, then we can take Swami's permission and admit them in the hostel. So I was deputed by the warden. The summer course was still a few days away. And finally, I was asked one day before the summer course, I was asked that you also take care of the new admissions. So I was busy. The new students who had to join today, next day, the summer course for all the campuses of our university students would start in Vrindavan. And so I couldn't go to Sai Ramesh Hall from the hostel for darshan. So Swami came out, and I just came out of the hostel. I was near the steps at the entrance itself, and I was having darshan from there. And Swami came amongst the students, the devotees, and then he just walked down towards the hostel. And next to me was two Sevada. And he came into the entrance. The Sevadal, of course, stayed back. I just followed Swami, and then Swami entered, and he turned to the right corridor, and we were in front of the warden's office. And suddenly, Swami made an about turn, and he said, "Hey, your hair is, you need a haircut. So many new students are coming today, and teachers look like this, you're not setting a proper example to the students." So he gave me a dressing down, and that is something again which I find so beautiful in Swami. If Swami was really unhappy and annoyed, he was definitely unhappy for the simple reason that, see, here is somebody who's in charge for admitting new students. They have no idea about what is the expectation from a student. So the teachers have to reflect that what is expected. And here this fellow is having so much of hair, so I just followed Swami, and he had basically come to see the rice room and the stock of rice consignment which had come for this summer course, and I walked behind him. And that is one thing I learned from Swami, that when he scolds you, you don't sulk. He never liked people to be sulking and feeling, self-pity, look, I'm so good, or I didn't make a mistake, and Swami scolded me, and that kind of a thing was not. If you receive it, and receive it with the feeling with which Swami has given out of love and affection, he would often tell that, see, I don't tell everybody on the street. I tell you all because I feel you belong to me. So if you reciprocate and feel with that kind of a feeling, then automatically you will benefit from it. So I followed Swami, and then when he saw me so close, again he made a loving face gesture, imitating anger, and took his look at your fellow. So later on, when I was asking the warden, said, "Do I need a haircut?" He said, "I don't think so." That's what he felt. Then what I realized was that what had happened, I had gone for a head bath. And usually at that point of time, if I have a head bath, I would not apply oil on my hair. So it must have looked a little clumsy. It would have looked a little fluffy. And that was enough for Swami to, tell. And so from that day, I changed my practice. If I go for a head bath, then, I apply oil definitely so that the hair is well settled. On another occasion, I remember Swami asked me to scold one student. And I was sure, tell him that Swami is very, very unhappy with you. And so I conveyed, and I knew that next day Swami will ask me. So I asked him, do you have anything to convey? If Swami asked me tomorrow, do you want to tell anything? And this is what that boy said. He said, "Sir, I have heard Swami so much, and having hurt him so much, I feel I don't deserve to be here. And let Swami send me away from here. And at least that will not cause any more hurt to Swami." So next day, as expected, Swami asked me, "Did you tell what I told?" I said, "Yes, Swami, I told that you were very disappointed and were not happy with that boy." "What did he say?" And I conveyed, "Swami, this is what he said." And then he said, and that was my moment of revelation. I think that all little drama that Swami enacted with that boy, of course, he could have told him directly, he could have told any other person, but he made me a partner in that whole drama. And that was that revelatory moment for me. He said, "Tell him, foolish fellow, wherever he goes in the world, if he is like this, will I not feel hurt? He belongs to me. Wherever he is still mine. Will I not feel bad even if he behaves like this wherever he is?" And what a bond. See, you may be in the physical presence of Swami, you may be thousands of miles away from him, but Sai's love for each one of us is so unique and so selfless, so pure that he never thought of himself. He was always thinking of what the other person needs and what the other person. It is because of that love that he had for humanity on, when 24, the first occasion when Aradhana Mahotsav took place, when Swami was interred, his the mortal remains were interred in the Sai Kulwant Hall. Just before that, we were eyewitness that the government of India sent their sentries and draped the Indian flag on the body of Bhagwan. And this is what I was telling the students and the teachers when we had the summer post just a month or two later. And I was telling them, why did it happen? I mean, this kind of an honor is given only to presidents, prime ministers, heads of state. Why did this honor be given to Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba? Was he a prime minister? Was he a head of state? He said, no, he was the ruler of the hearts of men and women. And we were an eyewitness to that scene when millions of people came to Prashanti, small and big, the politicians, the ladies, children, and we could see that side where they were weeping. That was the Sai and the relationship that people had with Sai when he gave up the body. And I said that when the government sentries went and draped the Indian flag, I felt that Mother India had herself come to drape her most favorite son in her beloved colors, and that is Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba on the first Aradhana Mahotsav that we had, and the reverence with which all of us felt what a glorious life Bhagwan has lived. 85 years of love in action, and all those of us who had the opportunity to interact with him, to experience him. And even today morning I was sharing with an alumnus, these were my thoughts. He said, there is none in the world, nobody in the world who I feel has loved me as much as Swami. Even I don't love myself as much as he loved us. There's none in the world who understands us as truly, including ourselves. We also don't understand. We are still discovering who we are and what we are, and we are still pilgrims of the path. But one person who understood us thoroughly, who provided everything for our material needs, for our spiritual growth, that is Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. And he is doing it. He did it day in and day out in his physical sojourn on earth. And even today, the way he is providing for everybody, whoever calls out to him, whoever is in need of him, God's relationship with man is an eternal bond. I used to tell our students, I've told it in Swami's presence, Swami is not merely our constant companion. He is our companion for life after life. He is the eternal companion. And he comes amidst us to set an example. See, you also can be like me. You also have all the potencies that I have. And therefore, walk the path that he has laid out for us, and you will experience that there is no difference between you and me. You and I are one. So with these few thoughts, I thought I will now stop here. And now I leave it to Sister Ramya and Bharti to take over the Q&A session part.
Thank you so much, brother. That was beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Thank you very much. We have a few questions which we have asked our listeners to send in. This was sent in ahead of time. So I will take a few. I mean, I will read out a few questions. We have segregated them as well, and then Ramya will do a few. So one of the first questions is, how do we feel and recognize Swami's love when Swami, the human form of Swami, ignores us? Sometimes Swami will ignore us for our good, but how do you still feel that love? I mean, how do we recognize?
See, there are many facets of Swami ignoring you. There's no one reason which we could attribute why Swami is ignoring you. One common reason which Swami would say is, supposing there is a repair taking place on a road. So what do the travelers on the road do? A detour is made and a side bylane is created and people start using that road instead of the road which is under repair. So he said, when you are in the repair shop, that is what I do. He will be actually more conscious, where is Bharati sitting in the darshan line? And not only you will know that Swami is avoiding, people around you also will come to know, oh, Swami is avoiding this person, or Swami is not very unhappy with that person. So they will start sitting far away so that they don't lose their chance. And so that also rubs in, very, very acutely to the person. See, this is how, but that is how it is. When Swami is happy with you, the whole world wants to relate to you. And when Swami is unhappy, the whole world is apparently against you, or looks indifferent to you or hostile to you. So, but Swami would explain, he said the purpose of avoiding is so that the repair work can take place at an accelerated pace, so that once the road is ready, you can start using the road again. So the purpose of Swami avoiding is also a manifestation of his love. He wants us to improve. He wants us to reform ourselves. In fact, one will remember, and all Sai students know, that Swami would invariably, in a year, at least once or twice, he will start avoiding the students, stop talking to them, and they will be in such anguish. And obviously they would have, and he will not tell what is the reason. He will, so each one starts introspecting and looking at every mistake that is possible. And so that is the purpose. And then Swami, the best part or the worst part of this whole thing is that Swami is missing more than any one of us. I remember once when Swami had banned the students to come for darshan, he was so annoyed for a certain period of time. And this is what devotees were telling. When they go for interview, they go with their problems. They want to ask Swami, this problem, that problem. Swami is not willing to even talk anything about their problems. He's saying his only talk was only about his students, and I'm giving so much to them, and they're not listening to me. And what should I do? What is your advice to me? That is the kind. They were so shocked. Swami, our God, we want to ask him 100 things. He's asking about his problem. And so, though we were not able to see him, and he was physically not able to see us, but more were missing each other, so amazingly. And I remember Ganesh Chaturthi festival came, and so that was a festival which was very special in Prashantlayam, because students would do the Ganesha immersion after they would take it round the mandir. And so if the students don't do that immersion, nobody in Prashantlayam can do immersion. So Swami had to very reluctantly give students to permission to come to, so that everybody, within a few days you have to immerse Ganesha That is how the Ganesh Chaturthi festival is celebrated in India, in the water. So that was our chance. And then we made a strategic move. So our teachers gave the clue that we will go round the mandir once, twice, and then when the third round is there, when the round, or maybe it was just one round, when the round reaches the entrance gate and everybody is in front of Swami, then, we will Ghirao Swami. So this was the plan. And, if you think you have an ace up your sleeve, Swami is a superhero. He is more intelligent than any of us. So when we entered the Prashanti Mandir premises, what do we see? Swami is in the first floor balcony. He has not come down at all. Now, how are you going to get out him? So then immediately, SOS quickly, that the moment everybody has reached and is visible to Swami, we will stop, we will kneel down, and we will pray Swami. So, as instructed, when the last student came into Swami's view, suddenly we turned towards Swami. Swami was on the first floor of his mandir, and we knelt down. And we started praying and pleading. And Swami asked, Amy, what are they saying? He was asking. And then one teacher went forward and Swami asked him, what are the students saying? He said, Swami, they are praying that you please allow them to come for darshan. And Swami was waiting, because he was missing the students more than maybe even the students missing Swami. So he said, granted. You all come back after immersion of Ganesha, come back to Mandir. And from that day onwards, it was back to good old days. So the point is that he would sometimes, he would depute some elders to come and advise us. And students would be so depressed. They'll say, no, sir, no matter what we do, Swami is not looking at us. He is not talking to us. And the teacher, he has an instruction or not telling that Swami has told them to ask. So in his own way, he's trying to persuade. He's saying, something in my heart tells me that I remember the first controller of examinations, Professor Nanjundaya, he's describing to us, and he's saying, something in my heart tells me that if you ask today, Swami will melt and he will agree. So without using Swami's name, he's trying to persuade, don't lose the chance. Today is your day. On another occasion, I remember Swami like this had sent word, and we were all ready that today is the day where the ice is going to be broken. And we were all ready for action. And just before Swami would come out for darshan from the interview room, Mr. Khyaldas, he used to do door duty in those days. So he came out and he came and took his position, and then he turned and he whispered. Swami would inevitably come after 2-3 minutes of his arrival, after Mr. Khyaldas has come out. So he quickly whispered to one student to spread the word. He said, Swami has said that so-and-so VIP, some political leader or something had come that day. And Swami has sent word that whatever you want to do today, don't do today. So that was the day we came to know the cat was out of the bag. That, so Swami knows that we are about to get out him, and he didn't want to show that scene to the political leader. So he said, not today, we'll have it tomorrow. So because this is a sudden development for today. So what I'm saying is that, there is always, it is love all the way. Even his scolding was a manifestation of his love. And I felt that sometimes, at that point of time when you feel that, why is Swami scolding? I didn't do anything. But a long time later, especially now, those words come back to you and you remember that and you realize, that was the reason why Swami scolded you. So, today that physical form is not there. So he's given you an advance, scolding. So, not now, but 10 years from now or 15 years from now, you will do some mischief. So I'm scolding you in advance. So, I mean, God is, there are no words to describe. So this is my thought on the question that you asked.
Thank you, brother. As a follow-up, you mentioned introspection is one of the things students would do, when Swami is ignoring them. Are there any other paths that you would take to get Swami to come back to his normal in terms of his human behavior among students?
See, one thing is, if you look at the Ashtotra Namavali, one of the names by which he is described is, he is Sulava Prasannaya Namaha. Very easy to please. And this happened one day. Swami was annoyed with the students, and so annoyed, he just did a walkout. He got into his car and just went off to Vrindavan. And we were so crestfallen. And I remember we were in second UG at that time. The whole hostel is so crestfallen. So we met as a class and we said, what can we do? And so we decided that we should do something to make Swami happy. And one of the things which we thought was, we'll take up some service activities. And so we went to the warden and we told him that, sir, we want to do something which will please Swami. Swami is so annoyed with us. And so he suggested, see, one thing which we all can take up. He gave 2-3 suggestions. And one of the suggestions which he gave was cleaning the toilets and the bathrooms in the hostel. Not that we didn't have workers. He said, you want to do some service, you can take up this cleaning there. And so we opted for that. And we communicated to the wardens. So the next Sunday, when all the students, other students have gone to the sports field for games, it was a holiday, we were spreading out across the hostel and we were cleaning. And some students also said, why workers are there? Why you are cleaning? But, we felt that we are not cleaning the toilet. We are cleaning the dirt on our own hearts and minds, which has accumulated. And that is why we want to please Swami. So this was one thing which happened. Another thing which happened at that point of time was early morning, one day when we got up, or we didn't get up actually, I didn't get up. There was a power cut. And because of the power cut, in those days we didn't have a generator. Suprabhatam was a casualty. But my room leader, he woke me up because he knew that I was very, very regular. So the bell didn't ring, the lights didn't go on. And so the usual aids which students have to get up in the morning were not there. So he personally came and woke me up. And I still remember I took a candle and there were others also like that. And in a hostel of about 400, there were at least 100 students who had attended Suprabhatam that day. And so these 2 events were reported by the warden to Swami in a letter. And that brought a beautiful reply from Swami. And he acknowledged the contents of the letter. And it's a very beautiful message which he shared, which was read out to all the students. And basically he said, see, I have so many plans for you, but, So what are your plans? But what I mean to say is Swami would melt. And Seva was a great way of winning. I mean, if you read the autobiography of Puttaparthi, they are old devotees of Swami. She was with Swami right from Shirdi Baba days. Then in this lifetime, she came to Swami, settled down in Prashantilam. And once, I believe Swami got annoyed with the devotees, permanent residents, and we did a walkout. So he went off and that I'm not coming back to Prashanti. So Pedabotu, thought about it, and she took up this initiative of bringing the ladies in the ashram together, and they formed a seva group. And there were 12 devotees who were assigned members of a silence committee. So they would go around the ashram telling devotees or visitors, please don't make noise, please maintain silence. So that was their duty. And the rest of them would go to the canteen and by rotation do seva there, cutting vegetables and helping there. And so she went and told Swami, like this we had started, and please, Swami, you must come back. And that is what made Swami turn his mind, and he returned to Prashanti. And shortly thereafter was this Dasara festival. In those days, we did not have Seva volunteers. Seva Dal was not there. So Swami would himself give the badges. So suddenly he remembered that Pedabotu had told me that there are these lady volunteers who are doing Seva. So he called Pedabotu. Pedabotu, how many people are there in your group? You said they do this Seva. And she said, Swami, there are 99. And you know what was Swami's reaction? He said, not bad. He was so amazed. I'm talking, of way back in the long time ago, 60s or maybe early 70s or whatever. Swami was so delighted that such a large number of ladies in the ashram had taken to this seva, and he couldn't resist the temptation of telling Pedabotu that, not bad. So once, as he told Professor Gokak, V.K. Gokak, he said, Swami, you're a hard taskmaster. And you know what Swami said? But we also melt, he said. So both things, he was tougher than a diamond, but softer than the petal of a rose. So that is the Swami we have seen and we know and we grew up with.
Thank you, brother. Beautiful. Continuing in the same vein, there's one more question. It's a pretty long one, so I'll read it. When one lived physically far away from Swami, one was used to having to connect to Swami's divine form in mind and heart because one couldn't physically see him. Is it more difficult to live constantly in Swami's physical presence and remember that he is divine?
Because you all are so far away, there's this beautiful dialogue which takes place between one of the disciples of Jesus. This is after the resurrection. And so Jesus appears before some of these disciples, and Thomas, who was there, he said, Master, if you don't mind, can I just assure myself that what I'm seeing in front of me is not an apparition, but Jesus in flesh and blood. And I just want to touch you and just feel that, yes, it is you. And so Jesus permits him. He goes, and the soldier had put that spear into Jesus' body, that wound was there. And so he puts his hand on the wounds and he finds that Jesus is in flesh and blood. And Thomas says, Master, I believe, Master, I believe. And these are beautiful lines of Jesus. He said, blessed are you, Thomas, who have seen and believed. But even more blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. So there may be some people today who didn't have that fortune of seeing Sri Sathya Sai Baba in their lifetime, or they recognized him much later after the Mahasamadhi. But if they are able to feel that love for him, that is Swami's love for them. That's what is the indication. How do I know that Swami loves me? When you feel your love for him in your heart, and you know your heart, right? So, so when you feel that love for him in your heart, know, that is your surest sign that Swami loves you, So that was the indication. Now coming to this, that it is easier to recognize him as, Swami would give this example that, say, for example, this is summer, and in India, the summer fruit is mangoes. One of our fondest memories of the summer would be that the first mango of the season we would get directly from Swami as prasadam. In summer course, every day we would get mangoes from Swami's hand, or for lunch or dinner or whatever. So Swami says, see, you love mangoes, and when you think of a mango, your mouth starts watering. But then say the mango season arrives, you go to the market and you go to the fruit vendor and you're picking up the mango, and as you're selecting the mango, then you suddenly start becoming finicky and start looking at each mango. Is it really a good mango? Will it really taste sweet? Is it really going to be delicious? Or should I pick up the other one which is next to it? All those kinds of thoughts come to you. So this is something which is very natural. And when you have physically Swami in front of you, all those kinds of things, like if you want to sit for darshan, you should have seen. I mean, I used to be told that, boys are running for darshan and this is not how discipline should be and all that kind of thing. But, you should see the elders on a festival day. There would be a huge crowd of elders and they would be the first person to be allowed to enter the mandir darshan area. And you should see they were faster than the students. So the point is that, you feel that if you don't get a vantage point, then maybe you'll lose a chance to talk to Swami, or Swami will not see you, and or you're an extra devotee because you are a little few inches in front and you have missed out. But Swami's was his grace was for one and all equally. In fact, once he was telling the students, when there are two ways in which my grace flows to you. He was talking in the context of darshan, and he said, one is, when you touch my feet, or my hands touch you. He said, my energy flows to you through the tips of my fingers or the tips of my toes. So that is one way in which I transmit my energy to you. Now there are thousands of devotees sitting, say, in the Kulwant hall, and they will not get a chance to sit, say, in the mandir or in where the students are. Even every student will not get a chance to sit in the front row every day. So with that kind of a thing, how will Swami's energy get transmitted? And Swami says, through my look. With one look, wherever we are seated in the darshan area, he said, through that one look, my energy is transmitted to each one of you. So it doesn't really matter where we are seated, his energy flow takes place. But, when we are physically there, say you have a letter in hand and Swami came in your direction and he talked to the person left of you. He looked at the person right of you. He took the letter of the person behind you, and he just ignored you. At that point of time, you feel so miserable. In fact, I remember one day, it so happened in Trai Vrindavan, Swami just entered the Jhula area where we were seated, and he sat on the Jhula, and he called out the name of a student. Hey, come here. Why were you weeping in darshan today? This was a question which Swami asked. Sit next to my Jhula. And Swami made him sit. So I was very intrigued. When I went back to the hostel, I called this student. I said, why did Swami ask like that? And this is what he told. He said, he was part of the Bhajan group. And he said, because they were part of the Bhajan group, after one row of students, these Bhajan boys would be allowed to go inside first, because Swami invariably would ask them, let's have a song, let's have some music or some bhajan. So invariably, the Bhajan boys should be somewhere in the vicinity of Swami. He said for 3 consecutive days, I got a vantage point next to the Jhula. Even by mistake, Swami didn't look at me. And so that fourth day when he was sitting in the Sai Ramesh hall, he was feeling so sad that, Swami didn't look at me and he was crying. And immediately Swami picked him up and said, why are you crying? And then he made a beautiful statement. He said, simply if you cry, I will not notice. Only if you cry for me, I notice it immediately. So that was, something which I put two and two together, and it is a beautiful lesson for life. And see, what you said is definitely true, because, as the saying goes in our vernacular, that there is darkness just under the lamp. So there is what is called as the Lord's Maya. Once Swami was speaking, he said, see, in Krishna's time, whenever God incarnates, there are three Shaktis which come together. One was Daiva Shakti, second is Yoga Shakti, and third is Maya Shakti. And he said in Krishna's advent, Krishna was the Daiva Shakti, manifestation of divine power. The second was Yoga Shakti. Yoga Shakti manifestation was Balrama, his elder brother. And he said Maya Shakti came in the form of his sister. The two babies get exchanged between the Nanda family and the Vasudev family. So Krishna goes to Nanda's house, and his baby sister born there comes to Yashoda, to his mother, Devaki Devi. So that baby girl was the Maya Shakti. And then suddenly Swami said that in this avatar, all the three are here, and he pointed to himself. So, so with that Maya Shakti, basically its operation is like this. He is divine, but that Maya Shakti, keeps deluding you to think, see, I'm not divine. See, I'm doing like this. How I can be divine? So the only way that you can overcome it, it is said in the Gita as well, and as well as articulated by Swami, the only way in which you can overcome the Lord's Yoga Maya is the devotee's surrender to the Lord. The moment your heart surrendered to Him, the Maya becomes, sort of immobile, or becomes powerless to delude. And Swami would give that example. He said in the forest, Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana, three of them are going in a line in the forest. Rama represents Paramatma, divinity. In this analogy, Swami uses it like that. And Lakshmana represents, who is third in the row, represents Jivatma, the individual soul. And in middle is Sita. Now, if Lakshmana has to see Rama, what should he do? So he has to pray to Sita that, Mother, can you move a little couple of inches to the left or the right so that I can see Rama? So he said that when the Jiva prays to Maya Shakti, out of a benevolence, she will move aside and you will get the divine darshan. So the the Maya Shakti of the Lord is definitely there. Just as the Lord has the Daiva Shakti and the Yoga Maya, similarly the individual devotee also has what are called as the adoring heart and the doubting heart. Both these facets are there. So when our desires are fulfilled, we say, oh, Swami is the greatest, and there's nobody like Swami. And the moment your desire is not satisfied, you may have been a devotee for decades, you have given so many speeches and platform, and all that goes to the wind. And he said, Swami cannot be God. Because if he is God, he could not, he would have saved me, he would have saved my husband's life or something. We have, so God has not come to save our wealth, or he has not come, he has come to build and strengthen the bond that we have had life after life with him. And the only way which we can achieve is through surrender. So practice of that surrender in an implicit manner is what is the requisite to overcome this problem.
Thank you, brother. Very nice. Beautiful. This is my last question, and I'll hand it over to Ramya after this. Swami's central message is that we are divine. How can we utilize Swami's example as the divine in human form to realize that we too are the divine in human form?
So, the only way we can reach him, first, who is he? And as Swami himself said, and what Baranosky described him, he is love incarnate, love walking on 2 feet. That is his real nature. And so to emulate Swami and to manifest our own divine nature, basically we have to walk on the path which he has shown. So that is important. And he has spoken, he has demonstrated by his own life, and every step we take in his direction is a step in that. So when he says love all, serve all, or help ever, hurt never, when you practice that love, and as Jesus said that love the Lord with all your heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and your neighbor as thyself. So, that neighbor is, it could be the person in front of you. It could be a child at home. It could be a person, you have somebody in the office. In your heart of hearts, don't have, the person may behave appropriately, the person may behave inappropriately. And this lesson was taught to us when we were students by Mr. John Hislop. And he said that he found it very useful. He said, see, supposing there is a thief. And how do you practice love with a thief? He has come to thief your house. So he said, see, in your heart, you should not have any hostility or any animosity towards him. In your heart, think, oh Swami, you have come to our house with this costume. And the moment you recognize the Swami in him, the game is up. Because he doesn't want to be identified. He wants to see, I am this tiger and I am going to eat you up. Or I am this thief, I'm going to swallow you up, or I am going to take away. Or I am this snake, which has entered your house and I can, create so much of risk to all your family or whatever. The moment you say, oh, Swagatam Swami, in your heart of hearts. But at the physical plane, in the external plane, whatever you have to do, in the worldly sense, do it. I mean, don't practice it. Swami used to give this example from Buddha's life. And Buddha, I believe, had given a sermon. And so there was the disciple who felt very, very inspired that, all is one, my dear son, that kind of feeling. And there was this mad elephant which was coming on the road, and the Mahut was shouting from the top of his voice, hey, this elephant is mad, move away, don't get trampled. And he said, no, all are one, my dear son. That was the bhavam which he had received from the master, and he was walking, and the elephant came and caught him and threw him. And with all those bruises, he goes to the Master Buddha, and he says, you said like this, and this is what happened to me, and I believe that that is all are one, and I should express my love. He said, that's okay, but the Mahut was also telling you that move away. Why you're thinking only the elephant is the divine consciousness? Why you're not thinking the Mahut is also divine consciousness, and he's alerting you to be vigilant. So therefore, what Hislop pointed out was that at the physical plane, whatever you need to do that. But don't have any animosity and hostility in your heart, because that will affect your health, that will spoil your own mood, and it will take you far away from Swami and connect with Swami. So don't, that's too costly a price. So don't do that. But at the worldly plane, yes. And in fact, many a times this happens, which is a fructification of karma, which is manifesting in our life. And the moment you take that spiritual approach to it, what happens is you may go through the motions of that event, but it will not cause any harm, or its effect will get just nullified. So don't get unsettled by it. It is some karmic, what should I say, effect which is taking place. If you take a spiritual approach, it is like a dated medicine. The expiry date is given as, say, 24th of April 22, and after that it will not have any power anymore left. So that is how we should approach it. This is my thought on it.
Thank you, Brother Sanjay. That was beautiful, to have a very pure, loving heart, but use your own discrimination as well, which is gifted by Bhagwan to all of us. Thank you. And over now to Ramya. Sairam.
Sairam, Brother Sanjay, thank you so much. I hope we can still take about 15 more minutes of your time. Is that okay? There's a few other questions. One that I wanted to ask from one of our SSSE students. Would you have 15 minutes to spend with us?
This is Swami time, so it is not whether you have or I have time. I used to always tell our students, what did Big Ben of London tell the Leaning Tower of Pisa in France? So it said, if you have the inclination, I have the time. So that is what Swami. So if we have time for Swami, Swami has all the inclination to spend as much time with all of us.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. I wanted specifically to start this part of it with a question from one of our 9-year-old SSSE students, Shreyam. And he asks, why did God create mosquitoes, ticks, or flies in this world? They are neither cute nor of any help. Instead, they only spread disease. So I thought that was an excellent question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
So, sometimes we find that mosquitoes are troubling us, or snakes are troubling us, or whatever, other beings. But do we ever ask ourselves that sometimes human beings can be more dangerous than a mosquito or a snake? So God has created this world, and each one of us with a purpose. And this is not my words, these are Swami's words. Each one of us has a purpose, and each one of us is fulfilling that purpose. So supposing, for example, if there is a mosquito which is troubling us, right? And what would you do? What should you do? Is it wrong? Like Mr. Hislop asked Swami this question. Swami, housewives have this problem. There will be these insects, etc. at home. So should we kill them or should we not kill them? And Swami said that this is the dharma of a housewife, to keep her house neat and clean. And he said there's nothing wrong. And in fact, recently somebody was sharing in the context of a snake. In one conversation, Swami said, see, if the snake comes into your house and you thrash it or, catch it and take it out, whatever, it is your dharma to treat the snake like that. And the snake's adharma or unrighteous act to come into your house. However, if you see a snake in the field and you bump into it, if you thrash the snake there, it is your adharma or wrong act, whereas it is the snake's dharma to be there. That is his home. I remember when the super specialty hospital was inaugurated in the first few months, there were so many snakes which would come into the super hospital premises. And our director, Dr. Sapaya, one day out of anxiety went to Swami and said, Swami, there are so many snakes coming in to the hospital. And Swami said, no, the snakes are not coming into the hospital. It is their residence area. You have gone and installed yourself in their home. So that's how you are coming into interaction with each other. In our own students' hostel, once when students are, Swami said, you know why the snakes are coming? They are coming because you'll throw all this food stuff, you'll waste so much food, and it goes in the dustbin, and the rats come to, relish all the remnants of what you'll have thrown, and to relish the rats, the snakes are coming. So he said, you are responsible. So the sum and substance is that every creation in this universe has a role to play. I mean, there's a beautiful topic in environmental studies, which is called biodiversity conservation. And we have absolutely no idea in an ecosystem how each species is playing a particular role. For example, I remember one of our awareness teachers, he was a NASA scientist in the past, and he gave us a small tidbit about a snake. And he said, the snakes have the potency of, there is a certain period of the time in the day where the ultraviolet rays of the sun penetrate the human atmosphere very easily. And so at that point of time, the snakes with their tongues, they attract these ultraviolet vibrations. And that's how, that's one of the causes of their getting the poison in their mouth. So the point that he was making is that we may think, for example, can you imagine a bat? We think if a bat is there in our premises, it is something very inauspicious or something like that. Can you imagine a bat, a single bat can eat? I was reading in a scientific book, a single bat can eat hundreds of mosquitoes in a single minute. Can you imagine what the role the bat, usually vomits whatever it has eaten, and it spoils your walls, etc. But look at the service it is doing. So you remove the species, and then you see how some of these species who were the sort of food for that species, how they sort of multiply and create a problem for the ecosystem. So God has some role for it, but that doesn't mean, Swami would always say, one student did a mistake. Why I stopped talking to all the students? He said, supposing one mosquito bit you yesterday night, what does mother do? She takes the flit and she goes and sprays the flit all over the home. So all the mosquitoes get affected. So he said, that was Swami's mosquito theory. So one boy makes a mistake. I put 100 students in place in their respective places by making them introspect, reform, so that they become deserving of Sai's love. So every species in creation has a role to play. Don't just look at, for example, in summer, what do you say? Oh, it is so hot, so hot. Prashant Indiyam is so hot in summer. But once Swami himself said, in summer, the earth receives the heat of the sun and preserves it in its bosom. And then shortly thereafter comes the rainy season. And that is the time when the farmers grow the seeds. And at that time, the energy which is required to supplement the water that comes from the rains for facilitating the crops to grow into a rich harvest, it is that heat which has been captured by the bosom of the earth, by Mother Earth, which is brought out and which yields that harvest. So we may think, no, it is so hot, but God's wisdom is beyond all of us. And why He has created something in the creation or even in our human system, there is a purpose behind it. We may know, we may not know. Science may prove it, may take hundreds of years to recognize it, but let us not question God's wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it kind of related to that question of faith, one of our center members asked, how do we develop unshakable faith in Swami so that even when we are experiencing difficulties and we feel our prayers are not answered, how do we continue to maintain that faith?
Yeah. So the first thing Swami said, see, faith will fructify into devotion. Devotion will fructify into surrender. For those who are in the devotional path, this is how it happens. And the other day I was listening to a monk of the Ramakrishna mission, and he made this very beautiful observation. He said, if your path is of Vedanta, which means you're following the path of jnana, it is still useful to cultivate devotion, because whereas the higher mind is getting attracted to Vedantic thoughts, the lower mind needs to be which deals with our emotions, that needs to be kept in proper shape, and bhakti is that which will keep it in proper order. Of course, if bhakti is your path, devotion is your path, then obviously that is the way forward. And Swami has said that devotion is a plant of slow growth. So don't think I came, I saw, and I was conquered. That's how Mr. K.M. Munshi described Swami on his first meeting. But in reality, however much you may say it with your lips, it's not that. In your heart of hearts, for you to recognize that faith and for that faith to grow into love, it takes time. So that's why Swami says, start early, drive slowly, reach safely. That is why we have SSC, or Balvikas, or why, from primary school to KG, Swami would always say, Prashanti Nilayam is from KG to PG. We have free education here. So, therefore, from that point of view, one has to keep it in mind that the first phase in our relationship with God is Arthi Artharthi. Arthi is a person in distress. So when you are in problem, you think of him. When everything is smooth, you forget him. So that is the Arthi devotee. And the Artharthi, he has so many desires in the world. Swami, I want a job, I want to get married, I want this, I want money, I want this. So many things are there. So it's a very beautiful, you ask Swami and he says, yes, you can have this. And he keeps blessing. But that is not the purpose for which Swami has drawn us closer. I give you what you want so that you begin to want what I have come to give you. So once, Swami has said that if faith is not something that if you had once, it will, that which was there, it should not go away. If it goes away, that means it was not there in the first place. It was, very, very weak. And, when the storm comes, in everybody's life, storm will come. See, that is for sure. And Swami says that he gives a two example. See, there's a tree. There's a tall tree and the storm came, and what did the tree do? It said, no, I am a tree and I have to stand. And, it tries to withhold, and then the storm blows it away, and then the next day you see it is uprooted. And you say, wow, such a huge tree, and it's 100-year-old tree, and it got uprooted. And then there is this grass, and the storm came. And what did the grass do? It just went low. The wind came, hurricane came, and it just went flat onto the ground. And then for 1 hour, the hurricane was there, and cyclone was there, and the grass was all flat. But then the storm blew away, and the grass just came up. And so Swami said that, see, this is how you can be. But one thing is that when our devotion becomes deep-rooted, then it should not be dependent on this and that Swami, this should happen, that should happen. As one devotee was saying, Swami said, if you prayed for something and it happened the way you prayed for, and you love me, there's nothing so special about that love. You prayed for something, I said something will happen, or the way you expected it did not happen, and yet you love me. That is true love. So thought, some food for thought. What is the difference between pseudo love and there are devotees, when Swami tests, and see, Swami will test. See, that's not that, see, in the relationship, Swami says, see, supposing you want to hang Swami's photograph in your house, what do? You hammer a nail. You have hammered the nail into the wall. Now, before putting the photograph there, what do? You put your finger on the nail and you shake it. Right? You yourself have hammered the nail into the wall and you yourself are shaking the nail. What is the purpose of that shaking the nail? To see that the nail is strong enough, firm enough to carry the weight of the photograph of Swami. So in the same way, God may test you, but if you feel, Swami, this is you, and this is your victory, and this is your defeat, because I am you and you are mine. And there's nothing, we are not too different. So once you have that kind of feeling, then the whole picture becomes very, very different. And Swami can change destiny. He can change destiny based on your response. But don't think that every moment, I have not come here to keep scrapping everybody's karma. You may say, Swami, I have cancer. And Swami says, cancer, cancel. And, you say, oh, he's God. And supposing, the near and dear one dies because of cancer. And then you say, no, how can it be? He didn't cure my, near and dear one. See, then that faith is a bargain. It is business. See, I broke 100 coconuts and, I want this return. This is the thing. God doesn't need coconuts. He is everything. All that he wants is your unshakable and unstinted pure love, and give him irrespective of everything. Once you grow in your devotion, then these things will become easier. And patience is all the strength man needs in life, Swami says.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer. So another question that we got was, how should we pray to Swami, and for what?
Yeah. So see, one is, I will tell you how Swami has asked us to pray. But prayer is a moment with Sai. And prayer doesn't mean that, I have to tell Swami something, I have to ask Swami something. See, many a time, even if you would go to Swami and you would be in the interview room with Swami, I had many such moments when I was the warden of the hostel. It's not that the warden is telling Swami something or Swami is speaking. Some moments will be, he is totally silent. Can you just be like that with him? So sometimes, you are speaking and he is listening. Sometimes he may be speaking and you have to listen. So you must wait for the mind to calm down. In the midst of silence, you will hear the voice of God. So, see, for example, Mohan was talking of, one of the most challenging course of a Sai student is getting up early in the morning, 5 o'clock, and being there for Suprabhatam. And when I was warden, Swami came in the dream of one of the students, and he said, you tell your warden that he should take care of 2 things. One is the students attending Suprabhatam in hostel. Second thing is they're coming to Mandir for my darshan. And for me, irrespective, even if a student, I didn't have that feeling, my student, who is my student to give me advice or whatever. Swami can give his message to anybody. If you are sensitive enough, it can come from a book, it can come even intuitively. And one thing which I have found, because I lived with students for so many years, and now, though I'm not in the hostel anymore, but it has become my daily practice to spend time early morning. In those days, we used to have just 20 minutes, and that was all that we could spare when we were students. But today, I have a little more freedom, and it is for a much longer time, and especially in the COVID, it has been such a wonderful time. And one of my very long cherished dreams was that I should chant Rudram, and that has become a very favorite pastime in the last 2 years. So one thing which I found in this early morning, that's why Swami would also tell students to get up early in the morning and study. He said, 1 hour of study is much more retentive of your study than at any other time of day. But Swami has told something very beautiful about this early morning prayer. He said the early morning prayer is like a fixed deposit. And the prayer that you do at the rest of the day is like your savings bank account. So in a savings bank account, you put in little money today, you withdraw some money tomorrow, you can keep doing like that. But the fixed deposit, once you make a deposit, for a certain fixed period of time, it remains there. You don't take it out on a routine basis. So he said the prayer that you do in your day-to-day during the day is like your savings bank account. And sometimes you will need my grace, so I allow you to encash it for all the little prayers that you're done during the day. But he said the early morning prayer is like a fixed deposit, and I will not allow you to withdraw it for any of these small little hassles that you have, and we have so many of them. When I went to London, for example, I was telling them that Swami in a discourse said, in India, the devotees pray to Swami even for a bus ticket. He must be receiving their prayers. So he expressed it in a discourse. And when I shared it with the devotees in UK, they were saying, here we also pray Swami for cars parking space. So we have so many little things to ask Swami for. So Swami said, all that is your daytime prayer. But the early morning prayer is exclusively meant for your spiritual growth. I will not allow you to encash it for any other purpose. So when you pray is also very important. And one thing which I find very, very useful in the early morning is that, the mind is quiet and it is silent. And for my day-to-day work, out of nowhere, suddenly I get this prompting, hey, today this particular task has to be given attention to. And this particular task you have not remembered for some time. Today you must tackle it today. So I get so many promptings. And what Swami said, in the midst of silence, you'll hear the voice of God. And I've had so many experiences of that. I don't want to get into that. But I'm saying even for my mundane day-to-day tasks, I get so many nudges and promptings. And that's how, in spite of us having so many challenges during COVID time, we were able to overcome them and see that the students' interests were not affected. So then let me come to the last part of it, and that is how to pray. And Swami has given the best example, and this is what he shared with one of the parents of our students. And this is what he told him. He said in Telugu, these are the lines. He says, Sukshmam lo moksham nerpistan. In a subtle way, I will teach you the path to liberation. And then Swami said, see, whenever you need anything, generally you'll ask, Swami, I want this, I want that. He said, one is, when you ask this and that, then it may not be the best thing for you. That is one thing. When Swami gives you on his own, he will take care of everything. What you asked, you did not ask, everything is, it's a wonderful package. So that is one thing. Second thing, which Swami said, when you have this and that in your mind, don't ask from me this and that. How you should ask? You should say, Swami, I want you, I want you, I want you. You may have X desire, Y desire in your heart, but don't ask for that. Ask for me. And he said, this is the secret, subtle way to liberation. So these are not, this is a mantra. Contemplate on it, and layers of meaning will get unfolded. And this devotee had this opportunity of experiencing it. One day he was out of town in a railway platform. Somebody pickpocketed him. He lost all his money, and worse, he lost his railway ticket back home. and he didn't know anybody there, and he was in the platform. The train is about to start, and he is thinking, now what should I do? And suddenly he remembered these words of Swami, and he said, Swami, I want you, I want you, I want you. I'm in terrible soup, I want you. And out of that milling crowd, there came this person tearing Hari, and he said, are you so and so? He said, yes. I said, here, take your ticket. And he hands him a ticket. He looks at the ticket, and sure enough, on the same train, his ticket is there in his hand. When he looks up to thank that person is no longer available to be seen. He has just disappeared. And he said, this is how I experienced how Swami gave me a word, and how I experienced the validity of that message which he gave. So remember this. This is how Swami has shared with us.
That's so beautiful. I was muted, sorry. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think one final question, if I may ask you, one of our members also, asked, Swami always tells us that we are divine. So how do we go about experiencing this? Like, what is the next step? What are the steps that we should take in order to try and get closer to that fact?
There's this calendar which we got for 2022. It's hanging in my office. The message is Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. What you think, you become. So you want to become Swami? Of course, I have answered this question partly because it was also asked by Bharati, but I'll give you one more facet of dimension. So one way of assessing our spiritual growth and devotion in a day, 24 hours, how much do we think of Swami? As much as you think of him, that much you love him. So you want to become him, think of him, thinking. One day we will become him. So everything you do, you're cooking, think that Swami is cooking the food through you. You are studying. There are two ways which two attitudes which you can have. Both are equally valid. When the mind is not very pure, Swami prescribes, and for many of us that works, whatever you do it as an offering to Swami. Swami said one day, this is a very, very, you have to be there to receive these diamonds from Swami's lips. So he was speaking, I think it was a Vishu day or Tamil New Year day, I don't remember. In Vrindavan, those were some festivals which we would celebrate with Swami in Vrindavan. And Swami said, there's one reason why man is reborn. To be reborn is like a capital punishment in the spiritual world. It's a punishment. You could have liberated yourself, but you come back again. And he said there's one reason why that happens, and that is because of body consciousness, he said. And he said the only way you will be able to transcend your body consciousness is this: whatever you do, dedicate it to God. It could be, I don't compartmentalize life. This is spiritual life. This is my Sai center work. This is my personal work. This is my family work. This is my office work. Never compartmentalize. Whatever you do, dedicate it to the Lord. And he said that is the royal way to transcend this cycle of birth and death. And so to do that is also at the worldly plane, that is a facet of surrender. And the other attitude is that to feel that whatever you're doing, Swami is doing through you. But the mind has to be very pure to practice that. And therefore, the first path is safer, and you will not get into any awkward societal situations. like, you somebody commits a theft and you say, God has committed the theft through me. Our spiritual philosophy becomes very convenient. So, like Swami's Chinna Katha, that somebody had committed a murder and he was being accosted by the judge in a court. And this fellow says, he quoting the scripture Gita, he says, the Atma cannot die, and it cannot be burnt, it cannot be harmed by any weapon, and all that kind of philosophy. So he said, I did not kill him and he did not get killed. That was the logic he gave to the judge. And the judge says, neither am I sentencing you to death, nor will you die through the execution of that sentence. So the judge played it back to him. So we are very good at convenient philosophy, but we have to be a little careful in that. So, that is my thought of it.
Okay, thank you. And I did tell you that was my last question, but I have one more, which might be helpful for our parents and some of the children who are listening to you. And that is, why does Swami put so much emphasis on spirituality in childhood and youth and the development of good habits at that time?
Yeah. So as I said, start early, drive slowly, reach safely. That is generally our tendency is start late, drive fast, and that's how we end up with an accident and we don't reach our destination. So this is basic rule of the road. Start early, drive slowly, reach safely. And the reason why Swami says start early is, as he said, devotion is a plant of slow growth. So if you start late in life, you may not have adequate time to mature spiritually in that time frame, because devotion is a plant and spiritual growth takes time. And so that is why, when we are young, we are taught, like I remember when I was a school kid, we had in our Hindi curriculum, Hindi language curriculum, the sayings of so many saints of India. And later on, when I came to Swami and I interacted with Swami, and today with life's experience, those words of the saints, which just meant just a few sentences at that point of time, today they are like the beacon for daily living. They provide you strength, they provide you direction, they provide you insight, they provide you solace, and all that kind of thing. So from that point of view, another thing is that especially when you enter when you are a small kid, it is different. Anything is, in your basic childhood, that part is okay. But when you become a teenager, become an adolescent, and there are a lot of these hormonal changes which take place, and therefore the probability and the possibility of getting astray, that is a time where an individual becomes a little more rebellious. It starts giving more value to friends than to the words of the parents. And so at that point of time, if you channelize your energies, that's what Swami does in his educational institutions. If you channelize that energy towards God, the youth of the society will become a blessing to the society and not a menace to the society. And so there are societal benefits. There is also individual, that the negative tendencies like anger or the violent, rebellious attitude. It's basically the ego, trying to manifest itself. And that's how you are designed, nothing wrong. But when we turn towards God, and spirituality doesn't mean that, for example, for young people, don't think that what was relevant for a 60-year-old may be applicable for a young child. For example, for a SSC student, 2-minute silence is good enough. For a 60-year-old, they say practice at least for half an hour. Practice meditation at least for half an hour in the morning or half an hour in the evening, or both. But for that age, 2-minute silence is good enough. There are different, for example, Suprabhatam, for the students of the university, it may be at 5:30 in the morning. But if you walk around the stadium, in the Hillview Stadium, you should not be surprised that our primary school children may be doing it at 6:30 in the morning or 6:45. So therefore, there is different age, different things. So it has to be modified, customized. Like Swami once asked, how much of God is enough in one's life? He asked a student. And he was sitting at Swami's lotus feet in the Purnachandra auditorium, in the guest room, green room there. And he was surprised. He just didn't talk about it. And then Swami said, there is no limit to God being enough in your life. And then he gave the example. See, now you are here with me at this point of time, but this will not continue forever. And after some time, you will go back to your hostel. This moment will not be there. So when God is giving you, take. A day will come that may not be available. So at that point of time, you will, like a cow, choose the cud. When it returns to its shed, you will have all the time to ruminate. So when your parents are there, your teachers are there, your mentors are around you, they will give you based on your experience. Your SSC teacher may be there. So grab it, or you may understand, you may not understand. Your whole life is there for you to understand the worth of what was told to you when you were at that age. And that is my own personal experience also. And so this is my advice to parents as well as to young children. And Swami never hesitated to talk about God to even primary kids. Though it could be a simple Veda chanting which they are doing, or it could be a simple small 2-minute speech which they have given in Swami's presence, or anything. He gave so much of encouragement to them in small ways. I remember there was this student, one day he came to me when I was the warden. He said, "Sir, I have made this painting." And I used to give these chits for them to go and sit in the mandir in the first row. And there was a button in the painting. He said, "Sir, can you press the button?" So I pressed the button, and I was stunned to see that just behind that Shirdi Baba's head, there was this wheel there. The wheel started rotating. It was a mechanical device, and the wheel started rotating and gave a halo effect and aura, which you see in the photographs of some of these divine personalities. And I was so stunned that an 8th class student had prepared that kind of a device. And I said, "Swami will surely like it." And that evening he came back and reported to me the moment he showed it to Swami and said, "Swami, please press the button." And Swami was so enamored. He took that painting and showed it to every VIP sitting there, every elder, and look what this child has done. See, that was Swami's way of encouraging. Wherever he saw excellence, he never hesitated. But look how that energy of that child was directed in making a painting for God and of God. So that is what Sathya Sai education does. There's so much of energy in children. It has to be channelized in a constructive way, and there cannot be any better constructive road than the road to God. So it could be a song, it could be a writing, it could be 2-minute silence, it could be anything, but to make them think of God and make them feel that God is something very, very important in life at that stage, because the support of teachers and parents one day will be withdrawn. I mean, this is the story of every individual's life. At that point of time, God will still be with them. And that is why the greatest gift that parents or teachers can give to their children is sowing in their hearts at that young age the love for God.
Thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough, Brother Sanjay, for this incredible satsang. You have just spent so much time with us and shared so many of your precious memories and anecdotes, each of them replete with a really beautiful lesson that we will remember because it comes with such a personal recollection. And I think really with your eloquence and descriptive abilities and the wisdom that comes with all your interactions with Swami that you have gained, I think you really filled our hearts and our minds and there is so much that we will, ruminate over and uncover in the days to come, and think so much about it. So I cannot thank you enough. I think some of the major things that I got out of it is, the theme of Swami as human and Swami as divine, that the avatar is a dual phenomenon, both human and divine. And that although he is beyond description, he encourages us to talk of him, because that way we can talk to him. And then the point about why should we contemplate on him, I thought was very beautiful, because especially what you said, that Swami said, that those who understand the divine nature of my advent and activities, I assure them that when they give up this body, there will be no further birth. And how that also has a liberating influence on the mind, and that mind that stands as a curtain between us and the vision of the avatar. And the beautiful example that you gave of the plane and how the avatar takes everyone. I think some of us are familiar certainly with that, but it was amazing to hear that every soul gets one chance, and it depends on what you do with that chance. The ticket that Swami gives you, very important. And the other thing that struck me was how Swami very specifically said that he is a combination of the Jiva Pragya and the Daiva Pragya, and that when that he said, when I think I am Sai Baba, then I am that Jiva Pragya. I'm limited by that body, but when I am I, that is the Daiva Pragya. So that was very beautiful. And the only way for us to approach him in, both as a human and a divine avatar, is only with a heart full of love. And that is something that, seems so accessible. And that was a lovely point that you made. Don't be the frog, be the bee. And we really thank you for sharing some of the very sweet, human aspects of Swami, borrowing a razor from Professor Gokak, which is really sweet. And the way that he said the real sign of his divinity is his love. And, the revelations really, amazing. Like I sort of I get goosebumps just thinking about that. You are not younger to me. You are 4 months younger than this body, but I am ageless. That's beautiful. And then, just all the other little human things that you shared. And because today is actually Sunday, we really, related to that beautiful anecdote that you said, and how, Swami really, out of his love, did not want to be put on a pedestal, but really wanted to connect to each of us as humans, heart to heart and love to love. And how Swami's love is changeless, and wherever we are always his. And then finally, how I think that point that you made, that we will know Swami's love for us when we feel love for him. So as much as we have love for him, he has that same love for us. And that's a beautiful way to feel that, actually, even, when we are trying to feel his presence within. And I think the one last thing is that was very important is, don't make bargains with the Lord. I really appreciated what you said about the way to pray to the Lord. And I just pray for his grace, that all of us here and all of us everywhere will always remember that we just must say, I want you, Swami, I want you, and nothing else. And may his grace always be with us. So with that, again, I cannot thank you enough. It has been just a beautiful 2.5 hours, and I hope you will join us again. There is so much more to learn and benefit from. So thank you so much. Our gratitude on behalf of all of us. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, the first beneficiary is myself, and I must also thank each one of you all for giving me this opportunity to do Sai Smaran. And I also have a lot to contemplate on whatever I said, because it has come back to my memory once again through this satsang. And I definitely felt blessed. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
No, thank you so much. And with that, I think we will proceed to our closing prayers, but our deepest gratitude, Brother Sanjay. Thank you. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, Sai.
गोविंद कृष्ण जय गोपाल कृष्ण जय गोपाल बाल बाल राधा कृष्ण जय गोविंद कृष्ण जय गोपाल कृष्ण जय गोविंद कृष्ण जय गोपाल कृष्ण जय गोपाल बाल बाल राधा कृष्ण जय Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna 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 Jai. Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna 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 Jai. Kamaala hari pyari mai meera mataar madan mohan puranidhar Krishna Jai Kamaala hari pyari mai meera manavihar madan mohan puranidhar Krishna Jai Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna 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 Jai. Krishna Jai, Rama Krishna Jai, Radha Krishna Jai, Bala Krishna 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 Jai. Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna Jai, Krishna 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 Jai. Govinda Krishna Jai, Gopala Krishna Jai, Gopala Bala Bala Krishna Jai. Govinda Krishna Jai, Gopala Krishna Jai, Gopala Bala Bala Krishna Jai.
Asato Asato Ma Sargamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
ॐ जय जगदीश हरे स्वामी सत्य साई हरे भक्त ब्रह्म जगन्नाथ नागेन्द्राशयना ॐ जय जगदीश हरे ओंकार रूप ओजस्वी साई महादेवा सत्य साई महादेवा मंगलारती अंधुको मंगलारती अंधुको मंदर गिरिधारी ओम जय जगदीश हरे नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा ओम शांति शांति शांति
समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।
परमं पवित्रं बाबा विभूतिं परमं विचित्रं लीला विभूतिं परमार्थ इष्टार्थ मोक्षप्रदानं बाबा विभूतिम् इदमाश्रयामि साई बाबा विभूतिम् इदमाश्रयामि Sacred, holy and supreme is Baba's Vibhuti, pouring forth an endless stream, his play of Vibhuti. So auspicious is its might, it grants liberation. Baba's Vibhuti, its power protects me. Sai Baba's Vibhuti, its power protects me.
ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात् ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात् ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्।